This episode of Bonfireside Chat is brought to you by our patrons at patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. Join the Senpais at patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv if you want to support your boys and you want us to continue to make cool stuff, keeps the lights on, pays for all of our costs, allows us to draw a modest salary that we're able to use to pay rent and eat food and do as many shows as we do and keep the quality up and do all of those things. We're only able to do that with your support. We really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
I forgot to mention, my name is Uncle Dan. I have a feeling we're gonna get along just fine.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And I'm Brad Gallaway.
And you're listening to Bonfireside Chat. It is a senpai favorite. It's Uncle Favorite. Uncle Favorite's back.
Uncle Favorite is my favorite off-brand cola.
Yeah. Dr. Uncle.
Yep.
Dr. Uncle Favorite.
Yeah. Yeah. And this week we are talking about Let It Die, a notable Souls-like from the past year or so. And as you heard, we are joined by Brad Gallaway. Hi, Brad. Thank you for joining us.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So tell the nice people what you do.
Well, I have a regular day job that's probably too boring to talk about here, but in my off hours,
go into it.
No, it's too boring.
No, but what's the address?
It's inappropriate for your listener base. I don't think they would like it very much. We're gonna skip over that. But in my true life, in my nighttime hours, I'm actually the editor of GameCritics.com. Been there for 17 years and still going strong. So that's what I do.
17 years. That's amazing.
A long time. Yeah. I am from the Pleistocene era of the internet.
Yeah, that is really impressive.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thanks.
Yeah. And you are so we met you in person actually at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo.
Yeah.
Because 2 years ago.
And, 2 years ago and last year. I love that show, man. It's so great, and I was so surprised to see you guys there the first time. I got to say though, the very first show that I went to, you guys were there, but I didn't listen to your show at the time. And I clearly remember walking by going, Bonfireside, what the fuck? Welcome to watch out for fireballs. And I was like, what the fuck is that? That sounds lame. And then I kept on walking.
Yeah.
And then I heard a friend afterwards talking about it. And I'm like, oh, maybe it wasn't lame. I'll give it a listen. And I've been listening to you guys ever since. So like for the past couple of years, you guys are a regular listen. I love you guys very much. It's an honor to be on the show.
Oh, thank you. That's valuable feedback we can use to go in a time machine and change the name of our show 6 years ago. Like, where were you 6 years ago, Brad?
You could have stopped this.
You had the power. Yeah, and so, Brad as a reviewer, and the reason why I asked Brad to come on this show is because me and Brad are Twitter friends, and I know he's a huge fan of Let It Die, and I knew if anybody, would have gotten to kind of the late games and kind of really dug into the secrets of this game, it would be you.
Yeah, I actually love this game very much. It's one of my most favoriteest games of the last couple of years. I'm really thrilled to be talking about it. And, interestingly, you guys probably didn't know this. My wife is a gamer also, and she actually just finished the game herself a couple of days ago. So it's kind of like a family institution, believe it or not.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's the family that lets it die together. Lets it. I don't know what the rhyme would be.
Yeah, something family togetherness, unity, hugs, something like that.
We met your wife as well at the show.
Yeah, she's a gamer for sure. We bring our kid too. We go down. We love the Portland Retro Gamer Expo. So good.
That's awesome. Yeah. It should be a good time this year as well.
It's always a good time.
Yeah. It's really cool. If anybody, again, it's a little bit early to start hyping for that, but if anybody's in the Pacific Northwest, it's a really, really good show.
Yeah.
It'll be in October and we'll be there.
I probably will be too.
Yeah, and Brad will be there as well. Find us all. Find all three of us. Collect. Fill out your charm bracelet. So it's a little disclaimer, off-season disclaimer. One of the reasons why we wanted to bring in Brad, other than the fact that we knew that he knew more about this game than us, is that neither Cole or I beat this game.
So I played it a bunch. I got to the point where I was like, I feel like I get this. I think it is not for me. I think it's interesting, and it's not like something where I'm like, I'm gonna take huge shit on it in front of Brad and be mean or anything, or to anybody who really digs it. I just say, it's not for me. I want to hear about why it's good. But just so you know, so that's why we brought in somebody who did know.
Yep. Brad is our ringer, and there's going to be a similar situation for Neo. So this episode is going to be, this is an impossible game to give our normal treatment to anyway. Just because of the way that it's structured. We're going to talk about that. This is going to be more of like a survey course talking about, how does this game fit together? What's cool about it? And, hitting these kind of secrets and need to knows.
Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit about the kind of like later stuff, like plot stuff, and we'll tell you when we're going to get into that. So if you don't want to know what it is, Neo will be very similar. Like Kole and I will have played a degree of Neo, but probably not got to the end game. And even if we got to the end game, we haven't played the DLC. We're not really engaging in the PvP they added. We probably are not doing all of the different Twilight missions and things like that. So we wanted to bring in somebody who knows more about that stuff.
Yes.
So so if that's just letting you know up front. So if that is a deal breaker, let's break that deal now.
So this game came out in December of 2016, so it's pretty recent here. And it's by Grasshopper Manufacturer, and it has Suda51's fingerprints all over it, even though he was mostly in an executive producer kind of role. It was actually directed by Hideyuki Shin. Yeah.
He is a great guy. I actually met him recently. Very nice guy. I love his shoes. He's got the best shoes. They're like shiny metal shoes. They're like really fly. He's like a real styling dude.
Are you talking about Suda51 or Hideyuki?
No, Hideyuki. Okay. Yeah, he came to promote the game. It's interesting. I do think it's a really interesting point that we should really promote, because a lot of people are under the impression that this is like a traditional Suda51 joint. And when the game came out and people were liking it, I saw a lot of people giving props to Suda. But I got to be honest with you guys, I'm not a Suda51 fan at all. I don't like his work. So I kind of stayed away from this game at the beginning until I went to go see it. And Hideyuki was there and he walked me through it. And then I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe Suda is bankrolling this, but it's not his joint. So that really is kind of the hook to what got me in the first place. So for other people out there who are not Suda51 fans like myself, that it's worth knowing.
Yeah, and I think that it's interesting because it could cut both ways, right? Like somebody could be like, they very specifically are a huge Suda51 fan and get to this. And this does have a lot of his kind of fingerprints on it, a lot of his kind of style, which we'll talk about at length. But it doesn't, the mechanics of it are not the kind of thing it feels like he's that interested in, right? To me. So it can go either way.
Yeah, it has actually.
Mechanics. It has mechanics, or at least like a kind of like a fiddliness to the mechanics. Like Suda games like have a mechanic to them, but they usually are kind of like archaic in one way or another.
Yeah,
I feel like
they're nowhere near as systems heavy as this one is. Like Suda will use a particular mechanic to make a pretty let's say pungent point about something, and usually kind of use that as a platform for whatever aesthetic he wants to drive forward. Whereas this is systems on systems on systems on systems.
Yeah,
totally,
and still has a real aesthetic strength to it. But that is a good point, though, that it's not what you necessarily would typically think of as a Suda51.
Yeah. I'm looking at Hideyuki Shin's kind of CV here. He primarily has done a lot of work with Konami on the Pro Evolution Soccer series. However, he did do character motion for Silent Hill 4, and he did CG for Tulip, that delightful game about kissing
Tulip,
people.
Kissing.
Yeah. But this is his first game as a director, which is kind of impressive.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
That kind of tells a story of somebody. I mean, I don't know if this is actually the case, but it sounds like somebody who was like very repressed and then got to just go bonkers because like, spoiler, like that's my favorite thing about this game is like the theming and stuff, which I think is like, chef's fingers, like sublime, like the actual dialogue and kind of the way that this thing presents itself is 100% to my mind. I really like it. Yeah. Just having going from soccer, which like that's just not going to happen that often in Pro Evolution Soccer. Maybe soccer's changed a lot since I played it in like third grade, and now there's a lot of bonkers shits and guys with people different limbs and things like that, But standard soccer seems much more tame.
Yeah.
So this was published by Gung Ho, which is a Japanese game company that primarily hosts and supports MMOs, chiefly Ragnarok Online. Like we're still around,
which you may remember from high school.
Yeah, It's it attempted. And this is actually the kind of final evolution of something. This originally was called something called Lily Bergamo, and was a real different look.
Yeah.
Which I've seen some screenshots of that. It was much more anime.
Yeah.
Style.
Yes. Thank you for adding that qualifier, because if we just said it was much more anime, people would huck rocks at us.
Yeah.
Brad, did you when did you become aware of this? Like, were you hip to it when it was Lily Bergamo, or?
No, I had heard whispers of it when it was still called Lily, but nothing about it really triggered my fancy, because I knew like Suda was involved, so I was like, not for me. But then I caught a really, really short trailer from early in development, and something about it did kind of catch my eye. It was just like maybe 30 seconds of like a really gritty hallway. And I mean, nothing really by itself kind of stood out, but just something about like the way it came together, like the angle of the camera, the darkness of the background, like the brutality of the attack that was going on. I'm like, that in itself wasn't enough. But when I heard that it was kind of like a tower and kind of like a roguelike, that kind of perked me up a little bit. Yeah. And then even more so when I found out that Suda wasn't in it. And I have to say, I just got to say up front, you guys gave a disclaimer. I have to also give a disclaimer. I'm well documented as having two specific weaknesses when it comes to video games. My first one is grappling hooks. Anything with a grappling hook.
Kindred spirits.
Oh man, I love a grappling hook. Sadly not in this game. But the other thing is towers. Any game that has a tower, I don't know what it is. I go mental and I gotta climb that tower. So this game is all about a tower. Therefore, my favorite game ever.
It's a real visual. It's a real distinct kind of concrete metaphor for progress.
Yeah.
Oh,
like you're literally just getting higher on this thing. Like, and a lot of great games have involved towers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Towers of Hanoi.
Yes, which is in every game ever. Yeah, you can't say that and then not give your favorite example of a tower in a video game. I gotta tell you.
What's your all-time favorite tower, Brad?
Yeah.
My all-time least favorite tower is probably Deadly Towers on the NES. I hated that game with a passion.
That's a bad tower.
That is a really bad tower.
This episode of Terrible Towers.
Disgusting towers. I don't know. Did you guys ever have PSPs? Did you ever play a lot of PSP?
Yeah. I recently just bought a PSP. I bought a beautiful purple Hannah Montana branded PSP so I can play Metal Gear Acid, and it's it's like my favorite console right now. Like,
oh man, now the PSP is dope. It never got the credit it deserved, but there was a tower game on that, and honestly, I can't even tell you what it was called, but it actually had a lot in common with Let It Die, like kind of dystopian themes. You played as like an android that stole body parts from other androids. So again, like kind of like the same idea of stealing weapons from your enemies, just like in Let It Die. And that was also a tower. And I'm kicking myself because I can't remember what it's called, but that one was probably one of my favorite like tower-based games. And I'm gonna look it up while we're not talking because that's kind of bugged.
Yeah.
You got yourself a favorite tower, Cole?
I'm just gonna say the Kefka's Tower. Why not?
I was gonna say that too.
Yeah.
You took my answer. I was hoping that you didn't, so I could just take it. No, we can share a favorite tower.
We can share this. Like this is the tower, and this also shares a lot of similarities with Kefka's Tower, actually, because it is the assembled pieces of the ruined world. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's split up in groups of 10. Which I think in Kefka's Tower is just does that with the enemies.
Yeah.
Where it's like the level 10, level 20, level 40 or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I found it. Rengoku. That's my favorite tower.
Okay.
Rengoku.
Oh wow, that's
not a great game, but man, it just hooked me. Something about it.
Some really interesting box art on that thing. Huh. So this game has been in development for quite a while, actually. Like, it was, under the name Lily Bergamo as early as 2013. They changed it to the current form in 2014, and obviously it came out. So like that is a long time for a game like this to be in the oven. And this game is also notable. You may recognize it from its weird distribution model. This is a free-to-play Souls game, or Souls-like.
This is the first free-to-play game we've covered on the network, I think.
Yeah, I mean, aside from like talking about stuff like offhandedly on the level, this is the first free-to-play thing we've done anything in depth on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's notable for like not being an evil free-to-play game.
I mean,
like it's pretty like I find it pretty. The time that I had with it, where I had a reasonable amount of fun, I didn't get super deep into it. I didn't feel like the mechanics were that like punishing, like pay to win. And part of the reason being is that there is this kind of mechanic that I'm not crazy about, but it kind of combats that, where you need to start new dudes to increase your level cap.
Right.
Kind of thing. So like, you can pay to continue your character, or you can do that. Right. And you need to do that eventually anyway. How have you put money into this, Brad? And no judgment if you have.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'll say up front that I played this game, and I did finish it. So I finished all the way. I started it in December when it launched, and I finished it at about February. So that was about 2 months of play. I mean, not hardcore play. I would play for just like a couple hours a day. So I'm sure that if you, were more fierce about it, you get through it a lot faster than that. But altogether, I guess I look at it two different ways. Like, in one way, I put some money in because I liked the game so much. I just wanted to support the developers. And since they gave it to us free, and I really did feel like the mechanics were very fair. I feel like they gave you a lot of game without really like having a lot of gotcha moments where you got to put in some bucks. Mm-hmm. So I probably dropped maybe, I want to say maybe probably $30 or $40 in just like stuff, like some of the blueprints you can buy that you don't need, and some of the extra death metals to expand storage, which I'm sure we're going to talk about later. None of that was necessary, but I just wanted to do it because I felt like they gave us a lot of game. But if you want to talk about how much money it took me to get through the game, I'd probably say from start to finish and until credits rolled, I probably put in less than $20 worth of like retries and continues. So considering how long I played it for and how much game there is, I felt like that was really good value for money.
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, that's the thing about free to play, where it's like, depending on where it impacts the design, it can be evil or not.
Right.
It can be, if there's like an end point to it, if you can put in a certain amount of money and have it be reasonable, and then that's good. And I feel like then it's not manipulative and shitty.
No. The reason I kind of hesitated when you brought up like, hey, it's not evil. I don't think it's evil either. I think like, so here's my disclaimer. I put in $20. I got the like Express Pass or whatever it was, and I got the PSN pack of like just a shitload of death metals, just so I could engage in these systems and make the progress of the tower a little bit smoother. Like, that is a reasonable amount of money to put into a game that is otherwise free. There's no such thing as a free game. However, when doing research on this, anytime money changes hands, especially if the word free is in the name of the model, people are going to raise a fuss. And so like that was one of the primary narratives about the game. And if you look on YouTube, you're going to see a whole bunch of, I hate this phrase, but hot takes about how greedy this is.
Well, sound of greedy fucks at greedyfuck.com or whatever. Sign the can't believe they're so greedy.
To speak up for the game a little bit, I mean, I feel like they give you like a full experience and they give you a lot of game for nothing up front. And I have seen a lot of those hot takes, and a lot of them are just really, really wrong-headed. Like, I'll see somebody who has not really engaged in the game system. Like, they'll create a character from scratch, and they have basically like no equipment, nothing's upgraded. They don't really know the game that well. They'll, go up a couple floors and make it to the first mini boss and get stomped, which is normal because, you got to level up a little bit, get a better weapon, just like you would with any game. They get stomped, and then when the game asks you if you want to continue, that's when they get all hot under the collar about, oh, the game wants me to put in money, and oh, what a ripoff. And it's like, if you had played the game like it was meant to be played, you wouldn't have to put any money in. It's pretty simple.
Yeah. And the usual disclaimer here, like, $20 means a different thing to different people. Like, I understand that. I agree with this entirely. It's just really weird how that dynamic kind of dominated. That's not weird. It's entirely expected, but a little bit disappointing how that dynamic just kind of dominated the entire discussion about this game.
Yeah. And like, gamers, like it's a thing. Like, there's certain things that just become, and to be fair, like a lot of games, like a free to play model does have a comorbidity with like shitty design.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're talking about, is the intersection between a pay model, and where it, actually intersects how the quality of the game is. And I think that like, again, it's probably not perfectly done. Like I usually will prefer a non free to play model in how it intersects design, but this could be 1,000 times worse. And I think to Brad's point, they do give you a lot of game for free. Like, I didn't put any money into it and played it long enough to where I was like, got it. And, it turns out it was not generally not for me anyway, but I got, my fun I was going to have with it and had a full experience enough. Like, if I felt sore about it, I could think of it as a demo.
Yeah.
And it would be great. Like, I was like, oh, and if I want to, I can buy the full game for $40, and feel good about it.
Yeah.
But I got a very robust demo that showed off, I felt like a broad swath of what it does.
Yeah.
For sure.
And we talked about that system density, which we're going to get, that's going to be the bulk of this episode, is talking about those systems, to see, how they work together and how they don't, and how people, what people might think about that. But this game really kind of gets you in with how stylish it is. And that's, like I said, that's, my A+ mark on this game is just how kind of cool and funny and good it is. in what it does, and how like a lot of the ideas in it are really kind of compelling without necessarily being like, there's not tons of deep lore. Like I looked up and there's some backstory on things, and there's an ending to the game that actually kind of tells you these answers, but you don't really need it. These kind of like just outsized characters that the Grasshopper does, that's associated with Grasshopper games, are in full effect here and are really charming and kind of compelling.
Oh, absolutely. I think the aesthetics and the writing and just the whole attitude of everything is just, that hooked me as well. I mean, once I got into it, just the wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and just the kind of sarcasm and just everything about it. Like, it doesn't take itself too seriously, and at the same time, it's like really grim and gross. Yeah. But there's enough levity to it, so it never gets oppressive. And just the whole thing kind of being couched as a video game that you're playing was kind of interesting too. But I just love the idea of going into this tower and you see all these bodies around, and like the way that you get into the hub and how you access your new characters, and everybody you meet is kind of weird and bizarre. Just everything about it, the tonally is right on point for me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's somewhere between like punk rock, Fangoria, and heavy metal. like a little bit. It's super. I don't know, like campy as well.
Yeah, neon campy Mad Max.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, with like an 80s arcade kind of feel to it. Like it's kind of pitch perfect in that regard. And like here comes the caveat, like here's the other shoe dropping. I wish more of that made its way into the game itself.
Oh, I do too. Yeah. Like the fact that I feel like the gameplay is all about that loop, which is not a free to play thing necessarily. Like that is it's an MMO-esque thing. Like the kind of that equipment loop, those kind of things, that climbing that tower feeling, that's either going to work for you or it's not going to. But what that means is that there's not a whole lot of kind of narrative content in the level parts of the game, I feel like. Yeah. So you get these little splashes of this like very intense, kind of style and this charm in the periphery. And then when the bulk of the level is the core systems, which like that's true of a lot of games, but usually there's a little bit more of a blending.
Yeah.
There, I feel like. Here it was like I was waiting to run into the next boss or have the next feature introduced, so I would get kind of more, dialogue or another like Uncle Death cutscene or something.
Yeah.
Like I wanted more of that flavor.
Yeah.
But if I was 100% on board with the loops and stuff, that wouldn't be a thing.
Yeah.
The
candy's in the connective tissue.
Yeah, for me.
Yes.
But the candy could be anywhere for you.
Yeah.
Look for candy, kids.
Anything can be candy if you try.
Yeah. Anything's edible if you eat it.
Technically. So like along with this, I think this game has an amazing first half hour actually, just in terms of giving you that style of showing you these bizarre images of kind of giving you a little bit of that backstory as well and introducing these characters. Like the opening and the tutorial, like I put these up here up front at the notes because like they do actually like introduce a lot of these elements for you in a really compelling kind of way.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about the plot, Cole.
Yeah, so we're told in this pixel/glitch intro cinematic that something called the Earth Rage split the world into 4 continents, and at the center is this kind of Tower of Babel kind of thing, the Tower of Barbs, and it is said that this is where you can get closest to God, and we're actually introduced to how things get to this tower on this subway that is just full of these dead and preserved bodies.
Weapon X's.
Yeah.
Like they all look like Wolverine attached to the Weapon X program. Like lots of tubes.
Yeah, and lots of ports. When your character's naked, they are just lousy with ports.
Man, that's something like in a movie whenever I see somebody like insert something into a port. Or like, playing lots of Shadowrun and just imagining someone just taking a 1/4-inch cable and like sticking this coaxial into their brain, like always fucking grosses me out.
Well, it's a thing. My mom was a breast cancer survivor, and that was where I learned about chemo ports, which is an upsetting thing. Like it saves a lot of lives. It is a good idea, but also
I feel like the ports that I came with are my ports that I like. Not that I'm not going to turn down free ports if it comes down to it, but like
we're not going to be getting free ports for a while. But I like to roll stock on my ports.
I'm a real basic bitch when it comes to ports.
I'm a port normie.
Port normie.
I guess it depends on what the port would bring you, though. If it was a significant upgrade, I might have to think about it. I mean, if it was something. Maybe not quite the dark gift, but to somebody said, hey, there's a port to make you like a lot stronger, smarter. I don't know. I mean, I don't like the idea of a metal hole somewhere randomly in my body.
Right.
Not a fan of
Maybe
that. But at the same time, if it gave me like thicker hair or a better pecs, I might go for it.
Yeah,
like strength port.
Yeah.
Or something like that, I would like a wing port. I guess my mouth.
You're talking about becoming Bane.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess we did use that idea already, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Bane does okay
He
for
does
himself.
okay for himself.
Bane does all right. I can think of worse fates than being Bane. You could be the Danny DeVito penguin. You're rough, mostly just because you have to wear like dirty like one piece pajamas for your entire life.
Yeah, and you also have like flipper hands, which is odd.
Yeah, that's not good. And he just eats raw fish all the time. Like, Danny DeVito penguin is disgusting. Like, it's great. I can't believe they made that character, like redeemed that character into like kind of like just a British guy for the Arkham games. It's like the movie version is this like literal monster.
Yeah,
and then now he's just a British gangster.
People? Jeez.
He's rock steady.
Yeah.
You select your fighter here as you're getting off on the station here, and this is where we're introduced to the mascot of this game, Uncle Death, who shows up in the loading screens and the stuff, which is a Grim Reaper with X-ray goggles, like comic book ad X-ray goggles, who skateboards. And
also his scythe can turn into a golf club.
Yes.
Yeah.
He talks like Cheech Marin.
Yeah. So here's the thing: like when you look in the supporting stuff and when you watch the final cutscene, apparently he's Finnish. And I'm sorry, Finland, I have no preconceived notions about you or the way you sound. And it was very bizarre to understand that this is a Finnish accent or a Mexican accent by way of Finland's.
Okay.
It's just kind of bizarre. Actually,
is that not the accent that Tim Curry had?
It would be very hard for Tim Curry to do this. I feel like Tim Curry has like Tim Curry and Gabriel Knight, and that's it. No points in between. But he's a really, really charming character, and the writing, like it's hard. Like if I was just reading this on the page, I don't think it would be good writing because there's all these like these ticks that come through. Like he says man at the end of two sentences in a row a lot, which is something you don't really do. Like that doesn't happen in dialogue, and it feels really weird, but it kind of lends itself to that Deadly Premonition like weirdness to it, that I think really works.
Yeah. He's incredibly helpful to the point of being obsequious. Like he, in his strange accent, he calls you senpai all the time. And like he wants you to get up this tower.
Yes. Yeah. I like this character a whole lot. I would buy a little action figure of this guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Action figure, plushie, anything, t-shirt, anything would be great. I mean, I think the thing that really endeared me to him is when he shows up and then he skateboards away in the very opening cutscene and he like totally biffs like the trick that he tries to do, like falls on his face. Like I was like, okay, I get this guy. This guy's my people. This works.
Yep.
And that's how you get the logo of the thing. And he's self-aware. He's like, now it's time to show the logo.
Oh yeah.
And it's on the bottom of the skateboard because this is a weird game within a game. Like he is telling you like you are playing this game inside an arcade. So that's why he can talk about this meta stuff. Like there is this weird meta layer to this.
Yeah. Like he walks you through kind of within one of these first areas of the tower until you die. And that is your tutorial. You save a mushroom woman who's trapped under some debris. Then you're killed by a dude with a sniper rifle. And then you're kind of pulled out one layer and you're inside something called the Hater Arcade. Playing on something called the Death Drive. It's a video game system that is powered by bugs.
Yeah. like a little dung beetle pushing a little globe around that is on the other loading screen, or the game is processing now icon. The loading screens are little Uncle Death skateboarding.
Yeah. And presenting these, just saying them out loud in a big list like this actually makes it sound more low random than it actually is.
I realized that too. I'm like, people who don't know what this is are just like, I'm never going to play this shit.
Yeah. like
based on us talking about it, but like, you just have to trust us that like it works. It works, guys.
Yeah,
it works.
It did. Like none of it feels out of place because none of it actually feels like it is in its place. Right.
There's no place.
Right.
Yeah. There's no place for it to be out of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the game that you are playing, Let It Die, is also a game inside this game called Let It Die.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we already talked about the free-to-play thing. We don't have to hit too much of this. There's that premium pass whose primary perk is to get you some inventory space and also gets you free elevator rides. But mostly that is for the strange online mechanic that we're going to talk about later. If you are a PS Plus member, like that $5 pack for just a shitload of death medals is actually kind of worth it. If you don't want to, say go back and try things over and over again on some of the particularly tough bosses. But otherwise, you're just going to be buying those things piecemeal or in these packs in a kind of confusing way. Are there any more details that we want to cover about the free-to-play thing before we actually get into the mechanics?
And one thing I want to say real quick is that it does intersect with the theming in kind of a clever way. Because if you're playing an arcade game and then you die and it's asking you to put in 50 cents to continue going, like that's kind of clever.
Yeah.
And works. And it should be noted, like there are other things to do with the death medals other than revive.
Yeah.
Like that's and I've read before, like kind of read strats and stuff. And that's actually like, not a real good use of your death medals in general. Like the other things are better because of that, mechanic I said, I was talking about earlier where to increase your level cap. You have to kind of let it die.
Yeah. And like buying them isn't the only way to get these. Like you get daily login bonuses as well, just for showing up.
Yeah. I think Brad, I think you're the person who told me this when I first started this, and I was like, I'm going to put this down until we cover it for the show. Or I was like, oh, I'm thinking about doing Let It Die for the show. I think that it might have been you who said to start an account now because you'll get daily bonuses and stuff. And they do events. And my little inventory, my like box of free stuff is full of stuff.
I have more money.
Yeah, they kick good stuff your way all the time. And it's funny you guys said that it breaks down about 50 cents and like that arcade connection, because I thought of that same thing too, and I thought that was really cool. But it kind of became like this this kind of exclamation that in our house, like whenever either one of us would die, I'd be like, "Fuck! There goes 50 cents!" Like my wife would know exactly what happened, or vice versa. So that kind of became our rallying cry for this game.
like the swear jar. It's like a reverse swear jar. Like the swearing was a side effect of the regular, like the 50 cents jar.
Yeah, totally.
Something cool that I noticed, if you check your in-game messages, I also started my account a little while ago. I was going back and looking through. They actually give these apology packs if there are service interruptions, which is fucking great. Like if there's, if there was maintenance or if there was something that was like messed up in the game for a little bit, like they will give death medals or kill coins or some of this currency or items or stuff as just kind of like hey, our bad. You couldn't log in and play when you wanted to. So here you go. That is great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's really important and good.
Yeah, they do a lot to really keep like the goodwill going, and they don't really seem like out to screw the average player. I mean, it seems like they're more interested in getting people just to play and engage with the systems. And they got to make money. I mean, like you guys said, no game is free, but they do seem really intent on keeping people feeling good. I mean, they've made a lot of changes to the systems. They're really pretty responsive to player feedback, and the guy that they have doing the Twitter account is really good. He's on top of things. Like he'll respond to issues, and he'll throw out jokes and give people virtual high fives and stuff. So they really are pretty up on engaging, which is cool.
Nice.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Something that we talked about. We're talking about this in kind of a goofy order because we did the tutorial in which you fight a little bit. We're going to talk about the fighting and the combat here in a second, just because that's so brief, and then you get kind of introduced to more of these systems. One of the things about this game that is, as much as I like all that flavor stuff, they introduce kind of a lot of their systems up front. I don't think that they do kind of spread them out as well, but it's just so systems heavy that like the beginning of this game, you do spend a lot of time kind of being told about these optional things, that you can do. And that does kind of kill some of the pace.
It's hard to know it's important.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Like if you're not going into this saying like, I'm definitely going to engage with all of this.
Yeah.
Specifically, we'll talk about when we get to the multiplayer kind of thing where it's like, I was just like, I'm not going to do multiplayer, guys. Like stop giving it to me. There is a feeling of that a little bit when you start out. But the structure of this game, there's 40 floors to this tower. Again, the Tower of Barbs, and it's kind of made up of just debris crushed together from these different continents, these kind of post-apocalyptic garbagey kind of areas. And each floor is kind of randomly generated. So there are kind of prefab little arealets, like these Lego blocks that are combined, similar to Chalice Dungeons. And that's probably the closest thing we've done to the show to how this actually feels to play. When you're on the ground. Like this feels very Chalice Dungeon-y to me. Like there are a couple of like little set pieces I saw like a bunch, and I was just like, okay, like this guy's gonna be here. I know what this is.
Tunnel with backhoe.
Yeah, tunnel with backhoe. The tunnel that opens up to where there's two. It like splits to the left and the right, and the right is a concrete or a backhoe that goes up to a concrete block that goes up to a grating, and the left is just a concrete passage. Like there's going to be a guy up at the top of that right, and then one of those, So they're just very. There is a little bit of. I wish there's a little bit of greater variety in the Lego parts to it. And what you're essentially looking for is an escalator that will take you up to the next level. Each floor can have these multiple levels to it, so there's a little bit of branching. There's also this little bit with the how the tower rotates, which I did not know from playing it.
Wait a minute,
I just knew that. Yeah, so I read about this later. Brad, can you speak to this a little bit? Because I only read about it. Like I said, I didn't notice it.
Yeah, for sure. The tower changes every day or every 2 days or something like that. So as you go up the floor, you have a little map that you can pull up, and it'll tell you which floors connect to which floors, which escalators go where, and that's fine. But after a couple days, you'll notice that your map is totally different. The main shaft, which is the central elevator, which takes you all the way up the core of the tower, is usually still there. But sometimes the floors on each side, it's maybe let's say on floor 1, you'll just have one floor, but on floor 2, you'll have maybe 3 or 4 different rooms that you can go to, and they're all horizontally equal. So if you go one, you can go a far left room, a mid left room, far right, and a mid right, and those rooms are all different. So you go there on Tuesday and you know which room is on the left. You go there on Wednesday, it's a totally different room on the left. So sometimes you got to go back. If you play every single day, you will eventually unlock all of the different variations of the tower, but it shifts back and forth. It's not totally random. I think there's a couple presets, but there's a pretty good number of presets. And if you just go in once a week, there's a very good chance that when you come back, all the progress you had is undid because the tower is now different.
Yeah, that makes sense, because if if the first time you walked into one of those rooms or one of those levels, it solidified, that would make going back through with these lower level characters really, really boring.
Totally.
Yeah.
Just because all right, I know exactly what kind of run I'm going to do.
Yeah. An interesting point, though, Gary, I wanted to respond to that real quick. You said that the enemies can tend to be in the same spot when you get to each floor. If you recognize which room you're in, then you will know, there's going to be a guy by this corner, or there's going to be a guy up top of this thing. That is totally true, but at the same time, as you get higher in the tower, I began to see that as kind of a bonus, because once you have more on the line, it costs more to revive your guys as you go higher, so you don't want to die on the higher floors. And once you know some of the layouts, you can be okay, well, I know these guys are going to be here. I can prepare for that. There's going to be another guy over here, and I can prepare for that. And then you go further and further once you memorize each layout. So even though the floor might be different, once you recognize where they are, it gives you a pretty good advantage. But I think the real randomness comes in with the haters. We haven't really talked about that system yet, but those guys are totally random. So even though the goons of each level are the same, the haters are the guys that catch you by surprise.
Yeah. So there's a good mix. I could see it being if my goal was just to make it further into the thing, I would be glad that I could recognize what a room was going to have, in store for me.
Yeah.
As somebody who was kind of playing it, to see new stuff. I wanted to see kind of new encounters and stuff, but it doesn't really have that. It's not really that type of game, which is not necessarily a weakness for it. It's just what what you're looking for. It's very similar to Chalice Dungeons in that respect. When we talked about Chalice Dungeons and how those aren't necessarily really designed encounters. They're kind of just here's a room with some guys in it. It's not authored content,
Totally.
And
yes.
As somebody who's looking for that kind of that feeling in this type of game, I think that's what I'm responding to, which again, that's more just a preference thing than anything.
Oh yeah, no worries at all. I mean, but it's definitely authored in very small chunks. This room is authored to have these guys, and then you will feel that every time you go through. And then once you know what's coming, you can deal with that in a way. But they do change up the room. Sometimes you go up to a room, it's not the room you think it is, or sometimes a hater will come in when you think there's no one there. So it's kind of a mix of both. It is random, but there's also quite a bit that's kind of prefab as well.
Yeah. Here's another question just about the topography of this tower. So I tended to want to stay toward the main vertical along the elevator shaft, because that is your lifeline. If you know where the elevator is, you can always get back to safety and do your level ups and stow things so you don't lose them, etc. And when I would veer away from that, it would always be, okay, what do I need to do to get closer to it in the next level after these, after these branches? Is there anything special about the levels that kind of veer further away from that ripcord?
Oh yeah, you'll see some unique rooms. Sometimes when you go down the main shaft, so the tower is basically a tower, but the floor is in the middle. There's one central elevator, and then there are elevators on the sides of the tower. It's if you're looking at a cross section of it, the central elevator would be a spine, and then that usually stays the same, but everything to the left and the right of that can change. Sometimes elevators are there, sometimes not, sometimes shortcuts, sometimes not. But the thing that really makes you want to go out to those side branches, and they can be pretty circuitous at times, is that you'll get a lot more of the materials you need to make some of the weapons. So if you want to go after some good weapons, you're not going to find very much near the central spine. You got to go further out, and that's where you get the good drops. You'll find like some treasure boxes. You'll find some unique rooms with unique encounters. You'll find some of the materials that you need. So that's really the impetus for going further out.
Yeah. The one time that when I went the furthest out was when I found like the mid-tower vendor that you can get to, like the half brother of Professor Hitler. Vendor. Yeah. So like that was the most unique thing that I saw. And I also like got to like some dead ends and stuff where you have to do some backtracking. Like it is not a guarantee that you're always going to be able to go upward from where, from whatever room you're going to get to by these escalators.
No, absolutely correct. I mean, you could very easily get yourself into some trouble if you go too far afield and you're not ready for it. There's lots of dead ends, lots of gates that can only be opened from one side. So if you kind of pick the wrong side to go from, you'll end up stuck and you'll have to like loop all the way back. And that kind of just adds to like the risk reward of, I could go out here and get some of these really good materials, but if it's not open or there's no elevator out there or, it could be a really long trek back. I've had some really unexpectedly epic sessions when I thought it was going to be a quick run. So that can happen.
Yeah, this copper ingot is burning a hole in my pocket. Yeah. And those elevators, you pay in-game currency to use those, unless you have that express pass, in which case you get to ride the royal elevator.
And it's kind of nominal currency.
Yeah,
like at least in the early game. I know the further you go up, the more you have to pay, but at least early on, I was not hurting for money.
No.
Because it ultimately kind of plays into something. I mean, this could probably be covered more in a little bit, but just something that I found, because you were talking about the lifeline, staying near the elevator, because I did that as well. And it's good to go back and kind of heal and level up. But I became frustrated that I couldn't purchase healing items.
Yes.
In the game. Like, I don't know if that's, if you had the same experience, Cole, or if like there's a good, so how do you solve that problem, Brad, other than going back to early floors that are full of frogs?
Oh, okay. Well, there's a number of different things. I mean, you can collect all the animals, any animal that you come across. There's enemies and animals, so those will heal you. So if you take those back to your main base, there's like a little fire, and you can cook those animals. They give you like double the health if you cook them. So if you do a little bit of preparation, do a couple runs to get some frogs or some caterpillars or something like that, you come back and you can carry those with you and save them. You'll also get some for free in your box, like pretty much every day. And later on, I don't know. I guess I should talk about this mechanic. Maybe this is the wrong time to talk about it. But one of the things that comes up is the expeditions. Did either of you guys get far enough to do the expeditions?
I opened up the capability to do it, but I never actually did it.
Okay.
Yeah,
so what happens?
Same here.
Okay. So what happens is in your hub, there's a freezer. And inside the freezer, it's just empty. It's a bunch of like meat hooks. And so every time you start a new character, if you don't get rid of your old character, you can put the old one in the freezer. And then while your new character is active, you can take all of your old characters and send them out into the tower. And they will fight other people and they will collect stuff and bring it back for you. So it's kind of like this farm that you don't actually have to actively farm. At a certain point, you'll just rack up like 8 or 10 extra characters that you're not using. You send those, I mean, you equip them however you want to equip them. With whatever weapons, armor, etc. You send those guys out of the tower, and then they will collect all this stuff and bring it back for free.
Oh, wow.
So in the beginning, it's like kind of hard because you don't have a lot of healing items and stuff. But you can just send those guys out, and by the time you come back, your box is like bursting with stuff. I mean, I was bringing back like 100 free items at a time, and it's just this giant farm of resources that are basically free.
Oh, wow.
Because, I mean, I know that you can use your kind of spare characters as a resource. I know that they're involved in the PvP component, like the kind of base rating minigame. Oh, yeah, you can set them up to guard, things like that. I just, I mean, I don't farm. And I just was to the point where I'm like, oh, man, like I could really stand to have a bunch of frogs, but I don't want to redo that first floor to get frogs. Totally. I wish that that stuff would appear on later floors, like, from time to time. Like, it was exceedingly rare.
Well, that's the beauty of it, though. You don't actually have to farm. Like, once you get those characters going, they just automatically do it. You send them out, and they come back. You don't have anything. It's just automatic. This saves your time. Yeah. Granted, it doesn't open up for a while, and you have to do the effort of actually creating those characters and use them for a little bit. But it's pretty painless.
Yeah. It's just using your idle resources. Time to lean, time to harvest frogs. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So let's talk about this combat, because this is one of the areas where people do make a big comparison between Let It Die and Souls, because of the perspective and the lock on and a little bit of the pace of the combat.
Yes, yeah, and the fact that it is in an abstract way stamina management based, which is like the more I think about it is the defining Souls combat thing. Is a meaningful emphasis on stamina management. So this is it's a lot like a Souls game where you control each kind of weapon arm independently. So third person, there's a lock on. Your right and left R2 and L2 buttons on the PS4 will attack with either of those weapons, and you kind of have like 3-hit combos for most weapons.
Yeah.
But it's not as deep as a Souls thing where like you have back step attacks and rolling attacks and running attacks and leaping attacks. Like every weapon does not have that, to that degree. So it is a simpler form of combat.
Yeah.
Than Souls.
The biggest wrinkle is the ability to do these things called gore-tastic attacks. Just when you have an enemy staggered, it's it is a super powerful attack that you can do. And those are particular to any given weapon.
Yes.
Yeah. Totally. One thing that you guys probably did not know about was that as you use each weapon, you gain proficiencies with those. And as the proficiencies go up, you unlock more and more moves for each weapon. So after you've been playing for a while, not only do your L2 and R2 have attack, your L1 and R1 have extra attacks. So then you'll have different moves there. And then also you will have, depending on the weapon, you will have like jump attacks, you'll have stagger attacks. Those things don't unlock right away. Like when you first get a new weapon, it's pretty basic. Like you said, 3-hit combo is all you get. Yeah. But as you go up and up and up, you'll have like a pretty good variety. Like when you're getting like the later stuff, like some of the katana stuff or like the iron or some of those things, when they're at their higher levels, they'll have a pretty good range of abilities on those.
I'm very happy we have you here, Brad.
Yeah, it's definitely good to know that. I do think, though, I still don't know if that's something that I love about the game, because hiding something like that behind kind of that progress when it intersects with kind of the weapon durability, it's not like a game where you don't start out with any control over what kind of weapon you're going to use, and you don't gain like full control of that for a long time. Once you can eventually craft something, you can make sure you can buy a disposable version of it before you leave your base. So like if you want to do a build, like if I want to play with the iron, I like this moveset once it's fully upgraded, I want to use the iron a lot to get those later combos. You can't do that for a long time. Like a lot of these things that I think that, and this is totally a preference thing, but it makes that, for the degree to which I played it starting out, like I was still frustrated by the kind of limited verb set in combat. It's good to know that it comes back, it gets better later. Mm-hmm. But early on, I was frustrated by it. Like I was like, I can't, there are enemies I'm having a hard time dealing with because I have these very, very basic 3 animations. With things.
For sure. That is very frustrating. But I kind of like that though, because it kind of forced me to use like a wide variety of weapons to kind of learn each one. And for me, that was kind of the spice of it was, I usually don't like weapon degradation systems. I think they're garbage like 99% of the time. But this is probably one of the only ones I felt like really worked because you do get quite a bit of weapons. Each one feels like significantly different. I mean, contrast that with something like Zelda Breath of the Wild, which I'm actually playing right now. I think the degradation in that is garbage. I think it's a terrible system that's just awful because the weapons are not meaningfully different. And so it's just kind of this pain in the ass. But in Let It Die, everything is so different that it really kind of makes you change your tactics. Like if all you have is the fireworks launcher, that's going to make you play very differently than if you have like the sword or something, the bat or the hammer or something like that. But after, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, I agree with that part, right? So like the weapon variety, like I think works, but I think it doesn't necessarily work well with the fact that your verb set is unlocked by mastery. So it's like 2 different competing systems, like having to change weapons all the time way into it. But if those weapons were more kind of robustly featured from the front, it would make the early game less like frustrating, I think. So there's that feeling of like things will get better for this, because I don't know. I mean, this was clearly not your experience. I don't know if it was Cole's experience, but like I didn't find the combat in this game super satisfying because I didn't have very many things I could do. It was really spacing based. Like I would just back away, let somebody attack me, and then kind of come in. There wasn't that like a lot of depth to it. What the depth that was there was from the variety of weapons, which like I appreciate that, but I wanted more verbs with those weapons, and I don't think I would have lost a lot having that from the front.
Yeah,
I don't know how those 2 systems interact.
One other way to look at it though was like I think I kind of saw it as a way of getting players acclimated to the weapons, because I think that not for you guys or for me even, because we're pretty experienced at these games, but for a lot of people, for like my wife, for example, I mean, she's great at games, but when you throw a bunch of systems at her, she kind of gets overwhelmed, and it's not her favorite thing. So when she gets introduced to a weapon where it's like, oh, it's only got 3 attacks, she masters those, you get 1 more attack, and then she can integrate that into her playstyle, gets masterful with that, gets 1 more attack, and it kind of slowly builds her up. So that was kind of a good manageable progression for her. So I thought that was pretty good. And also, I don't think we've discussed it yet, but some of the drops that you find in the tower are blueprints. Like you said, it takes a while to find some of those, but once you find a blueprint, it's random, so you can't always predict what you're going to get. But hopefully you find the thing that you want, like you find the sword that you like, or you find the bat that you like, or the armor that you like. And then once you make those things, you can buy one of those, and if you let some time go by, you can buy another one. So eventually, I mean, I would really like the iron a lot. So like I would go into the tower with like 15 iron. So like I was always having the weapon that I liked. It was just kind of a matter of building up those resources. So in the beginning, it was like, yeah, jack of all trades. But towards the end of the game, I definitely had a very specific build that I was going for, and I was able to accommodate that. I mean, granted, it took time, but that it just had to get there.
Yeah.
I think, and that kind of plays into, and again, like all these things are preferences. So it doesn't, if that early combat works for you. The other thing, so I had that thought too, and I got some blueprints and everything, but something, and this is a specific, it's very similar to not wanting to farm for frogs. Like I don't want to farm for materials either. Like I don't do, I don't do that. Like I don't like it in games, So similar to how you feel about weapon degradation, like I always feel like it's a bad thing to scour for materials, almost always. So like the idea of getting a blueprint and then being like, okay, well I have to go hunt for this thing, especially with the limited inventory space, since I didn't put any money into that.
Right.
So like it made it's good to know that these things do get better. I think it makes the first foot this game kind of starts off on kind of annoying in a way. Like there are things that like are admirable about it, but I was like, I'm annoyed by it. Like this is annoying, and I think that's when people don't like free to play, that's part of what they're talking about. Like I don't think this is evil, but the fact that like some of those things, so like when I didn't put any money into it, when you buy it, extra inventory space, are you buying storage space or are you buying inventory space on your character?
Both. When you get an express pass. Oh yeah.
Okay. Because I wanted more space on my character, and like I was like, I'm really annoyed by this limit. I could give them money to get rid of the limit. Was like one of the few places of friction with the kind of free to play model and the gameplay for me.
Well, to clarify that a little bit, once you go a little further, you actually unlock different character classes. I think altogether there's 8 character classes.
Yeah.
And one of them is very specifically a collector who has like 4 times the inventory without putting any money in of the average fighter character. So you can get a much bigger personal inventory without putting money in. And then if you want to put some money in, you can expand the storage of your base at home. So you'll eventually, theoretically, you'll have a bunch of collectors in your freezer. You send those guys out, they bring some stuff back. You store it in your freezer because you got more storage and all that, and that's fine. I do agree with you, though, about looking for materials, grinding for materials. That's a pain in the ass. I don't like that either, and thankfully, I was just really focused on getting to the 40th floor, so I collected stuff as I went, and I used a collector as soon as I could have one. And just in the course of me playing the game, like just climbing the towers, I got enough materials like 90% of the time. I never really intentionally went out to find a material. It just kind of came as I played, and that was good. So I didn't ever really get too stuck on anything. When you get about to the late game, when you need like the really end game stuff, I mean, yeah, I did a little bit of grinding for that, but by that time I was already so deep in the game, it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah. A lot of my complaints I recognize are early game complaints.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make the complaints not, and it doesn't mean I wasn't annoyed. Like there's still, there's still valid things. It's good to know that they get over that. I just wonder if what I'm keying on is that progression, or like whatever the escalator that's going to get you to that point where everything is kind of singing and working together, whether I think that's smooth enough.
Yeah.
For me personally.
So I would also like more moveset complexity in the early game, specifically because like I love rotating from weapon to weapon. Like we said, like this catch as catch can, adapting to different situations. That is a cool and good loop. It's hard for me to get too bothered by it though, because it feels like they made a conscious decision to build in a lot of headroom for that progression. And I could see, like, if this was a game we spent a lot of time with, with the current weapon variety, us getting kind of upset that each new weapon was just a slight stat bump compared to the other ones, or you were investing this money and these resources into improving the stuff, and all you got was like something that was slightly more effective. From a numbers way. So like building in a way that this can, grow and get more complex, in a way that is not just messing with the sliders. I think is good, but it does hurt the early game experience, which is where we spend all of our time.
It's just what things are going to be in the game out of the box and what things are going to be tied to progression.
Yep.
It's very interesting because that ties into Neo as well, which we'll talk about next week. Where like, and I am sympathetic to this. I don't know how hardcore I am on it, but one of the criticisms of that game is that you have to buy a lot of skills that should be there from out of the box.
Right, the kick.
The key pulse on dodge, the parry, things like that. That's like, why can't I do this? Mm-hmm. And it's that game. It's a very different philosophy, but something I see in games a lot is this idea that you have to, like, it has to have these kind of RPG elements. So things have to be kind of about progression. Yeah. And we don't really know what to put behind those walls. Mm. And this feels a little bit like that. Like it's not that all of the things that will eventually get better shouldn't be tied to my progression through the game, but maybe some of them shouldn't be.
Right.
Maybe that's why I'm talking about the smoothness of that hill or the smoothness of that escalator. Escalators aren't smooth, but you know what I mean. Like that's a luggage, it's a luggage conveyor. Like that's a, but you know what I mean. Like right. It's just like whether giving a little bit more of that taste of the later game complexity. And I am, to Brad's point of like it doling out that kind of piece by piece. Like I get the idea behind that, but it just I almost would have preferred it to be a little bit more dense up front, and crunchier a little bit up front, and then let me get kind of like things a little bit beyond that in the end game, not these things that I feel like are pretty basic.
No, I mean basic for us though, to be fair, because I think we all have a pretty good experience with the Souls series, but like I know a lot of people who have not really played the Souls series who jump into this. And they might see it as more approachable. If they tried to have too much stuff going on, they would just be like, what is this? I don't get it. Forget it. And since it's going free to play and trying to cast as wide a net as possible, I can kind of see. I kind of agree with you. I'm not disagreeing at all, but I can see from the perspective of them trying to get like as many, out of all the PSN, more than 1 million downloads have had. How many of those people are familiar with Souls style combat? Probably a pretty small percentage of those. Yeah. Maybe not so small these days, but I kind of get what they're going for. Although
they can't operate as if everyone.
Yeah.
It has a basic familiarity with Souls combat.
Yeah.
It's just interesting the way that like a choice like that can kind of domino. So like, the part of me that is interested in like, analysis of games can think of it in the terms we're talking about. But the part of me that just in my hands, it just made a lot of the combat real samey. Like, again, it's about that real spacey. And like the idea that it gets, progressively more as enemies come in with greater weapons. And as you fight more bosses, it does get more complex. But you spend a lot of time with just like guys who are just really just spacing, like wait for them to attack, take a back step.
Yeah. So that's kind of the interesting focus of what's going on with this game, which I think is a little bit different from other similar types, where I think the real focus of this game is to kind of master those things and give you that predictability so you can make longer and longer runs. Like I think you want to go as long as possible without dying. And I get what you're saying about not having like the interesting combat, but at the same time, the predictability is what makes it playable, because if each battle that you came across was like a new tactic, unpredictable tactic, fight to the death, you would die so fast and people would scream about having to put in more money all the time. But if you can get these guys down, how they fight, and you master your weapon, you can play for a really long time without putting any money in at all. I would play for like a week without putting in any money at all. And so I think that it's more like a marathon rather than like a high intensity sprint sometimes.
It's the long loop versus the short loop.
Yeah.
It's the when you talk about that tower and kind of thing, and this is very focused on the long loop. Like it is about making general progress in the game through either like mastery and opening up of these different systems, having a stable of characters, having your farm squad go out and do things like this kind of, in a more traditional roguelike, it would be improving your town.
Totally.
As opposed to improving the individual shorter loop, and I think that like it might be something with like roguelike elements where for my particular taste, I definitely like skew on this like Isaac side of what I like about roguelike is not the improving your town part. Like in Isaac, I'm not real into unlocking new things I can get. It's about the variety of play in the individual short loop. So there are two different things that the genre does, one of which is a real attractant to me, the other one that is less so. So I think that's part of what we're speaking to.
Oh, totally. I think this is definitely a game that requires much more patience than you might think from first appearances. It seems like it's going to be a hardcore action game, and it kind of is, but at the same time, you've got to have that meta patience going on of like thinking about the long term, thinking about your goals, and it's a lot of that stuff is not going to be satisfied in any one session, but it's like over the course of time. And so some of these systems, which I think are probably frustrating or maybe feel tedious at times, actually support like that longer marathon run.
Yeah. And for a game that is straight up structured and rewards a style of play where you come in and do a little bit every day, that makes a tremendous amount of sense.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. People don't realize, but about 5 minutes back, I threw a knife in between Gary and Brad, just to see if they would, but no, it's generally agreed.
Yeah, this is a congenial.
Yeah, no,
we're all adults here. Yeah,
no,
we're gonna sell that knife and split the profits to make we're gonna split a grilled cheese. Cool. So, joke's on you.
Oh no. So at least in the early game, and I know that there is a lot more variety. Like every 10 floor group of this tower has a different theme to it. In those first 10 floors, I love like the Mad Max improvised kind of stuff. Like that clothes iron is great.
Oh yeah,
just like that plays so differently compared to a number of other things. Like it's like a short range flamethrower almost.
The belt commander thing, like,
yeah,
it's real good.
Yeah.
It's interesting that the weapons become more weapon-like as you go too.
Yeah.
Like I got I remember the first time like I found like a long sword. I was like, oh shit, and it's appreciably different. One of the things this thing does, I can speak well of the curve, is that it's not a super flat curve. No. We've talked about a lot on shows on the network about like how boring it can be. Just like, oh, every floor the difficulty rises with me perfectly to my upgrades. So I never feel powerful, and that's not the case here. Like you can get an item that is like really significantly better than anything you have.
Yeah. And
it has that durability to balance it out. So you're not breaking the game, but like for a little while I have this long sword that will like, wreck shop.
Yeah.
For where I'm at in the game.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. I really appreciate that about it.
Yeah. That's from the third biome. Interestingly, the fourth biome, from what I looked at, and corroborate this for me, Brad, if you want, you go back to improvise stuff, but it's all sports equipment. So like you have a bowling ball at the end of a stick that you use as a club.
Oh, totally. You get that. You get like a baseball pitching machine that you use as like a gun, so you're like lobbing baseballs all over the place.
It's and that the Gore-tastic attack for that is you push the baseball or the pitching machine into the person's mouth and shoot baseballs into it.
Yeah, some of these animations are pretty good, and I love just like you said, the random feeling of some of the weapons. Like it's so funny to use some of these things. Like It's interesting you say that the iron starts out or it feels like a flamethrower, because in the beginning it's just hot steam, which is kind of funny. But like after you upgrade it, it gets like these spikes, and it actually does shoot fire out of it afterwards.
Oh, wow.
So like this giant plume of like searing hot flame comes out, and you can like scorch like 6 or 8 guys at a time with it. It's pretty awesome.
Well, that the iron actually worked really well with the decal that I used, and decals are like these perks you can get. We'll talk about those a little bit later.
Ring slots.
Yeah. Combining that with the one that gives you a small health boost on every attack. Because that is just like a whole bunch of scratch damage. Like that was a good way to like give yourself a small little boost was to hit as many people with the steam as possible, just to refill your health like that.
Oh, totally. Another really good tip for like the early game is getting one of the decals that makes you immune to poison, and not only immune, but you actually gain health from being poisoned. So anytime somebody stabs you with a poison weapon, you just start getting healthier, or you can like lure guys into pits of poison or poison clouds, and they'll start choking and puke, and you can get free hits on them while you're like recharging your health bar. It's pretty good.
Oh my gosh, didn't realize that enemy. Well, it makes sense. All the enemies are all just you. That puking animation is really upsetting.
Yeah,
actually.
Like the idea of you getting poisoned and having a button prompt to puke is really great. Like it's like Snake Eater.
Yeah,
it's that kind of attention to detail that I think is very fun. So as you move through and you get all these kind of different weapons and the like, eventually you will die because it's a hard game, and you get this representative from Direct Hell Insurance comes up, and this is where you can revive for one death medal. What's interesting about reviving is it's just a strict revival. The thing that killed you is still around. It doesn't just hang out right next to your corpse, but it will be around. So you have to have kind of a plan for dealing with whatever that thing is. So depending on what that is, I could see the tactical decision sometimes of not doing this. Instead starting that second character and coming back another way with, maybe a better run up to that point. If you got killed by a particularly nasty hater or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's worth noting too that the enemies do not regain life. So if you choose to kick in that 50 cents and you get revived, that enemy will still be at the point which you left them. So if you got them down to half health, and then they got a lucky hit on you, when you come back, they're still at half. So you probably would have a pretty good chance of finishing them off.
Yeah. And this also applies during bosses, too.
Absolutely,
that is a way to, power your way through some of these larger, tougher enemies.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think this game is really fair with free to play, but when it comes to the bosses, I mean, have your coin purse next to you when you get to the bosses because you will die and you will want to continue. So that's for me. That's where I spent most of my the money that I put into it.
Yeah.
That's my understanding too. And reading about it online is just that like there are bosses that are just kind of commonly accepted by the player base to be, kind of like an arcade, like kind of quarter munching boss. Like it kind of turns a little bit into playing like the X-Men arcade game or something. Where you're going to put in some money to get past this boss because it's tough.
Yeah. It's one of the places where there are few downsides to actually reviving as opposed to, botching a run up to that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we take a moment and just gush about how awesome the background is during these game over sequences? Just the crazy 3D fields of lasers and stuff. It's like a 90s yearbook photo. It's great.
Yeah, part of that super neon aesthetic.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I totally love it. I love everything about it. It's fantastic.
It's really good. One thing, I mean, not to, I'm not trying to balance a scale or anything, but when you're in these areas where you're fighting, one thing I don't really like about the game, and I know this opens up eventually, but it's one of those like Krusty will get here eventually things, is I think the environments in the first biome are really bland. Mm-hmm. I wish that it wasn't like it. I felt like they made a game out of sewer levels and started with a sewer level, and you spend the first 10 floors on a sewer level.
Oh, totally. Yeah, those are just sewers on top of sewers on top of sewers, for sure. Yeah.
That seems like it's such a weird choice because I know I looked at later game stuff and how it changes that up, and that's great that they do, right? So it's good, but why start with like the most video game level, that you could possibly do?
Yeah.
Almost more than anything, like, is what made it feel so Chalice-y to me.
It's one of the few nods to like verisimilitude or plausibility in the entire game that you would start in the like in the undercarriage of the tower in the subway tunnels below it.
The world's sewers like combined into this.
Yeah.
But I really wish that it was a little bit more like every once in a while you go into a room that has this kind of visual set piece-ness to it. And you'll find like, it's like, oh, this like here's a bunch of like other corpses kind of like draped over, real life construction equipment for kids, things like that. Like, and I liked that. I just wanted a little bit more of that, and that was something that like, as somebody who's like kind of enjoys exploring in games, like that part was kind of missing for me. And again, it's just whether that's important to you.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's worth noting that like it was part of my experience. It's worth noting that it's not something you're going to get here.
Right.
True. Yeah, you don't get a lot. I mean, you will come across the occasional set piece that's like further out, but yeah, it's not really about like exploring or what are you going to find. You know what you're going to find. You're going to find more enemies. You're going to find a couple of pickups, and then you got to keep going. That's kind of what it is. So either you click into like that loop that we discussed earlier, but if you're here for like immediately deep combat or like exploring to find new sites, new vistas, new things, that's not going to be there.
Yeah. If you're a Souls person and you hear the Chalice comparison and you go, then yeah, this probably won't bother you. If you hear that comparison and you go, play
depending
it.
on what kind of you make.
Yeah.
That's terrible. Like, these challenges are awful. That is awful. Even this game at its worst is nowhere near as bad as the chalices. I feel like it's really unfair to let it die. That's
okay. Sorry. That's
we're baiting you into that. I think we're right down between Brad and Cole.
Like I'm not. No. I didn't mean to make this hostile. No, I'm trying as hard as I can not to carry any. Like I am actually not bringing a lot of our baggage from how badly the chalice is articulated for us in particular.
I hated the chalices. I hated the chalice. When you guys were doing your chalice shows, I was sitting there fist pumping the entire time you guys were doing those episodes. I was like, get them, get those fucking chalices, get them, kill them.
I'm literally,
that was me. I'm not a fan.
I am literally just talking in terms of the way the biomes work. Honestly,
exploration and stuff like it does have that.
Yeah.
So it's that is an element. It is a direct 1-to-1 chalice.
I would say that this game is like what I thought chalices were going to be before I actually got to chalices. So that's kind of like, if that makes any sense at all, this is what I was hoping to get, and, what chalices did not deliver. So
yeah,
it's what they're going to stick us with in Bloodborne too. Just you wait. Yeah. So as you're kind of moving through these environments, which do get better, but again, like Krusty like gets there in the game, you're fighting enemies, and their enemies are pretty samey as well, which we'll talk about. Which I don't think is that big a problem because of that weapon variety. Right. So like where these enemies get. Where the variety comes through in this is in what weapons they have for the most part.
Yes.
Most of the enemies are quote unquote screamers, which are other humans that have this kind of randomized gear. There is a neat little intersection between like, oh, I've used that weapon a lot, so I know how it's going to operate.
Yeah.
You know, the first time I realized like, oh, like I picked up an iron before anybody hit me with an iron. I saw somebody with an iron and knew that they would be stuck on this like, you know, kind of long attack animation, and could use that against them. It was really cool.
Yeah.
And these are just kind of sprinkled in the level. You know, like, again, there's not really encounter design. They're just kind of guys.
Yeah, yeah. Like, it'll just be, like, combinations. So it feels a little bit emergent, right? Just kind of, hey, we rolled up that you're going to fight, you know, a machete guy, 2 iron guys, and there will be a fireworks gun guy, you know, supporting them from range.
And it's not that, like, it's not that often that you fight a bunch of guys in a group. Like, a lot of the encounters, at least early on, are one-on-ones, you know, or 2-on-1s. Like, eventually you kind of fight more mobs, but, you know, there's not a whole lot of that. The kind of more interesting and more kind of noteworthy thing are haters, which we should talk about. We talked about them a little while ago, but we should articulate what those are.
Yes. So when a character dies in the tower, what happens is, you know, that player's avatar remains on that floor, or, you know, kind of enters the pool to invade another person's world. This isn't controlled by a different character. It is just that person's avatar with their equipment and roughly their stats, and they become kind of mini boss like. A mini boss is a little bit wrong. Think like a Black Knight almost. Yeah,
or an invader.
Yeah, there's actually a distinction here. There are ambient haters, which are just automatically populated in some levels. Like, they're not always in the same spot, and they will be, you know, usually tougher than the screamers that you find, because it's like that was some person who was going through the game trying to make it through. So whatever gear they were wearing, that's what they have. And sometimes you'll come across guys who are pretty well kitted out. So those guys can be really dangerous. But there's also a different type of hater where, this is kind of referring back to that farming I talked about earlier. When you send your alternate characters out to farm, you actually send them out into other people's worlds. So you pick a player, and then you send them out, and then they will fight if they come across each other. They don't have to fight. Right. But if they come across each other, they will. So you can be going through a level and everything's fine, and then all of a sudden you get a warning saying, oh, you know, was it Cucklord 420 or something has joined is hunting you, and you're like, oh shit. So that means somebody saw your name on a list and they sent somebody after you. They're ostensibly farming, but at the same time, it's still a threat to you in the level.
Right. So so that farming has an unintended, or has a side effect that is not immediately visible to you when you select that item on a menu, which is you are making somebody else's day worse.
Basically true.
Yeah.
So something that I forgot to know. So you have these screamers, you have these hunters, all of them basically dudes and ladies in equipment that you can use. What's great is they can and will fight each other. So, like, you know, a valid tactic, if you have a really tough hunter or a really tough hater, is to, like, lure them into each other and hope that there is friendly fire that gets them to turn on each other in a Doom-like fashion.
Again, a lot like invaders and like a seed of a tree of dynasts or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, they will they'll fight the ambient enemies in your zone, which helps you out and also weakens them. As well. When we talk about haters, you will become one as well.
Yes.
If you die, like, your character will revive as an enemy. Like, I fought, you know, versions of myself from, like, I played for a while, stopped, played again to prepare for this recording, and then ran into, like, versions of myself that had died, you know, 2 months ago. It was very weird. When you kill one of your own haters, you reclaim them and send them, like, correct me if I'm wrong, Brad, like, you send them back, right? Yeah. You get that character back.
Yeah.
Exactly so.
Can you also send a hunter out to do reclaiming for you?
No, you cannot. You can either, if you die, you can either pay the 50 cents to revive on the spot. You can go back to base, and you can pay a bunch of cash to have Uncle Death go back and get him for you. Or you can go and kill them yourself and bring the body back. But then you have to actually fight yourself. So if you went out with your best gear and all you have is, like, middling gear back at base, it might be a tough fight. You have to fight yourself.
Yeah. So it's a little bit like if anybody's played Zombie U.
Totally.
That is a similar kind of loop. Yeah. No, I like this a lot. I really enjoy just a person's corpse getting up and becoming part of the rank and file. Like, again, that adds to that variety, and also the fact that they are juiced. You know, it brings something new to this, I think.
I really like also how it draws from your friends list as well. So if you have friends who are playing this and they die, like, you can see exactly where they died, and you're like, oh, okay, I didn't make it through that, huh? And then, like, you know exactly what happened to them. It's pretty good.
There is a limit for these guys, like how tough they can be. It's the highest level any of your guys back at your base are.
Yeah.
But that's a pretty kind of a wide range. So like you will run into things that are pretty tough. And I guess there are developer haters as well. Again, like Brad, stop if I'm saying anything. So like if the game tries to look for one and can't find one on your friends list or anything, it will spawn in a developer hater, which are like the ultra hard versions because they have really good equipment.
They are harder and better equipment. They give you a lot better rewards too. They give you a lot more cash, and they give you some pretty good rewards. So it's worth fighting them. And I think that they may have actually changed the rule about the upper limit, because I've fought guys who are actually like much higher level than me on the higher floors. That may change. They've done a number of updates lately, and I was actually going to try to jump in and refresh my memory on some of this stuff and see some of the changes that I haven't caught up on. Unfortunately, I got hit with a game update, and I could not download it all.
Yeah, I spent like a half hour last night downloading
I didn't realize, but that may have changed, just FYI.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. And then the other thing you get from these guys is another form of currency, which is a stuff called splithium.
SP lithium, splithium.
Yeah, splithium.
And that's like energy. It's like soul energy that is used for researching items. Again, I was drowning in this stuff. Yeah. There are a couple of other enemies that are kind of basic. There are these tubers, who are these cybernetic augs. I love the way these things look, like with Tesla coil heads, the ones that are modified into being wasps and stuff like that. These are not, like these have unique movesets, unique capabilities. Generally, they're pretty fragile, but they're going to do a lot of damage to you if you let them.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. You can kill them. You can get some special materials for them, so it's important to pick those up. But I will say one little tip for anybody who's thinking about playing this game is when you get to these levels, leave one of these tubers alone. Like leave one behind. We might get to that reason later, but don't kill them all. Leave one.
Mysterious. I did not leave one, so
yeah.
We'll find out about that. The are these modified versions of these things that become the kind of like flying mecha that exists? Like the flying mecha with the drill I hate a lot. Like I hate that enemy. I think that like diving attack, like something about like when you lock onto a character, the camera doesn't move on the vertical axis. So when they do the thing that they jump up, it didn't make my camera keep him in my view. He just disappeared for a second. So I got hit by this more than I care to admit, and it does so much damage.
Yeah.
This thing, and they don't really have a weakness unless they miss an attack. So they will, if they do a regular attack, you back up. They will instantly back up. That was faster than any of my animations. And then they would do or outreach me at the very least. I would back up so where by the time I could hit them, I was out of the reach. So until I figured out you can't lock onto them, which is a decent thing to learn. But these things show up pretty quick. They're like second floor guys, and they do a lot of damage if you get hit with that drill. Yeah. And if they hit you, they don't get stunned, so you don't get your kind of counterattack opportunity.
Yeah.
Like I hated those things so much. I got super super frustrated at that. Like that was the first time when I died to that for the first time I died, and then the very first time you can respawn, they give it to you for free. And I did that and then died to it again, and I was so pissed. Like I was just like, what is even killing me? Like because the lock on doesn't. Again, it's just on the x-axis.
Yeah. So
I didn't know that it was jumping onto me.
Something that we've learned over the course of playing and examining this series is that the Souls perspective, lock-on, model of combat, anything, lends to flying enemies having a huge miss to hit rate in terms of whether or not they're successful.
Whether they're going to work.
Yeah, whether or not they're going to work. So like when a game has this model and thinks about putting in flying enemies, they should probably really, really think pretty hard about whether or not it's just going to break the game. Yeah.
There are ones where it definitely works. Like I love the manta rays in Demon Souls because they're an environmental hazard. They're not like an enemy.
Yeah.
And that really works for me. But it can really vary.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
And these are a basic ass enemy. I'm sure that I would get to the point where I could master them. It's not saying that. It's just like I found them super frustrating at first because of a camera lock on quirk that I wanted to mention.
Yeah. I quickly learned to rely on my ranged stuff for this.
Yeah, I mean they will kill you every time. First time you meet them, they will kill you, guaranteed. It's just just going to happen. So just expect that. Yeah.
There's also something too where like my degree to or like the whether you're going to get ranged options will vary. So I eventually did that too. I was just like, these are my fireworks guys.
Yep.
But early on, I did not have good luck with fireworks shooter drops.
Yeah.
So did not have range options for a while.
Yeah. So, Brad, when you talk about leaving one of these tubers alive, are you talking about keeping the jackals at bay?
I certainly am, Cole.
Yeah. Let's talk jackals.
Yeah, let's talk jackals, because you get in. At least I was introduced to these guys in a cutscene, and Uncle Death was like, "Oh, they're the baddest ass." Scavengers, whatever. They have super futuristic gear. One of them uses a laser yo-yo to attack. Again, super stylish, super cool. The way they function is like the Ghost and Spelunky. And this is from you, Brad. I didn't know this, so I apologize for reiterating what you said before we recorded. But if you clear out a floor and you stick around, these guys will come out and then just kill you. You cannot beat them. One person did by getting him cornered in the Royal Elevator, and it took him 13 hours to take him down.
Oh yeah, they actually patched that out. That was a weird bug. I remember when the developers found that out. You can, they are beatable, but you got to be very specifically kitted out to hunt them. You need some like really, really strong weapons. You got to have a certain type of mushrooms. I mean, it's doable, but it's really hard. I mean, their purpose is basically just to kill you on sight, and they will one-shot you.
Yeah.
It leads to some really tense moments, because the game does not tell you that they only show up when a floor is clear. At least I don't think it tells you. So I would go through and clear a bunch of floors, kill everybody, and then I would be searching, looking for nooks and crannies, seeing if I've missed any materials. And then this little siren goes off, and it just made me just immediately like shit my pants. I was just like, oh God, because it's scary. They show up and you don't know where they are, and as soon as they see you, you're basically dead. So I learned from one of my good friends, Darren Foreman. He's one of the writers of Game Critics. He is even more a pro at this game than I am. He's really good at it. And he told me, leave at least one guy on the floor. That way the jackals never come. That way you never have to worry about actually shitting yourself. And then you can, and the tubers are so easy to avoid. If you leave one, it's basically like you can dodge and juke them at will.
Yeah.
So it's not a problem. Yeah. So that's your kind of insurance, your jackal insurance,
What I was looking online. I couldn't find an answer for this. What do you get for beating one?
Nothing really. It's just like prestige. You can actually make their suits, and you can make their weapons. But the suits are not very good from what Darren tells me. I've never beaten them because that was just like more than I wanted to put into the game. But he's beaten them like multiple times. He's made all the armor, and he says the armor is crap, and the weapons are okay, but it's just more of a prestige thing.
Yeah, if you send somebody into another world and you're wearing that armor, you look cool.
Yeah, it's the badass factor. It's not really like a big advantage. It's not really worth your time or energy to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And then there are there are environmental hazards, these beasts that are around, like mutated flora or fauna that'll do things like make poison clouds and stuff. And also, cute little frogs that you can grab and devour.
Yeah, buffs and debuffs. Yeah. And different animals you have to approach in different ways. Like some of them you have to sneak up on, some of them you have to get to really quickly, etc. And you can either like consume them, you can stomp on them to turn them into a mushroom, or you can put them in your back. In your pack, your death bag, and take them back to cook later.
Yeah.
Those things are really randomized, even more so than the enemies and stuff. I think that's really where a lot of the roguelike stuff comes in, because getting the right mushroom or the right beast can really make or break a run. I mean, there's some that can turn you invisible. There's some that turn you invincible. There's some that can poison people. I mean, there's a really wide variety of effects, and depending on whether you can like eat the animal for the health or kill it and get the mushroom and get the ability. And then if you go back to base and cook them, then you like double the effects. And so if you are pretty strategic about your gathering and your use of them, I mean, you can build up a pretty good stock of stuff to make a run much more successful than it would have been otherwise.
Yeah. The noises that the frogs make are the best.
And I also love that some of them have little crowns.
Yeah, they're little king frogs, and it's definitely a person making the noise. Like there's no animal involved in that.
Yeah,
it's really charming.
I think I was reading some trivia about this. I think that what's happening is someone is speaking out loud the Japanese onomatopoeia for frog croaking is what's happening.
That could definitely be the case.
So it would be like if one of us was saying croak as
Yeah, that must be what it is, because it sounds really hokey, but it's also super charming.
Yep.
Yeah, it's real cute.
Let it die.text.
Yeah. So that's kind of what you're doing. As we mentioned, there are those mushrooms, et cetera. Harmful items can be thrown as enemies as kind of grenades. The interface for this will take you a little while to get used to.
Yeah, because you're using that weird touchpad. I don't like
using the touchpad, sliding it left and right to do things. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
And then the consume is pressing on the right, throwing it is pressing on the left, and like I feel like when you're playing this game as a rite of passage, you will accidentally eat a poison mushroom
of course,
that you want to throw, or vice versa, throw a healing item at an enemy.
I wasted so many sleep mushrooms by doing that.
Yeah.
And those things are so useful. They're sleep grenades. Come on.
The inventory space, which we talked about a little bit before, is a huge thing, which I think if you're just using healing items and weapons and armor and stuff, it's not a big deal. But once you have to start factoring in like picking up crafting materials, that's when I started feeling the burn with my limited inventory space.
Yeah. So you start making kind of difficult choices, like, will I prioritize blueprints? Will I, do I need another one of these weapons? Do I need to drop a version of this that'll be worse? It's a lot of like on the fly inventory management.
Yeah. It's so, and then blueprints, as we mentioned, those are randomized. That lets you make things in your base rather than find them. You do have to get the crafting materials for them at least once. To be able to make them, and those can vary a lot, what you're going to need.
Yeah.
You're going to get crafting materials well before, since it is random, like well before you find the blueprints.
Yes.
For the thing. So it's like, I was like, oh, I keep finding hover metal, and I've got nothing that needs hover metal. And like the whole time I played, I didn't find anything that needed hover metal. I just had this like box full of hover metal.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a
super
late
random
thing.
You'll get stuff like well before you need it, and it's that's kind of the thing of the game is like, you get the stuff and you think it must be valuable, but you may not know what it's needed for right away, and then it's like, well, should I carry this thing which I don't really know what it's used for, and I don't know when, or should I pick up this mushroom which might keep me alive to get back to base? Like, you're constantly making these like really quick decisions, and it's just really, I think it's tense to begin with because I think that makes for good gameplay, stressful gameplay in a good way, but it's also because I think they want you to maybe gently pony up for the extra money to actually pay, and then you get automatically more slots to any character, and then more slots back at base. So they're like, yeah, this sucks, doesn't it? Yeah, it sure does. Well, $10 a month, and we can help that problem go away.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It makes sense. That is a tried and true tactic.
Yeah.
I paid.
Yeah. Gary, why didn't you pay? Yeah. So we mentioned decals. Decals are like ring slots.
Yeah.
You have tattoos and you put them on to give yourself certain kind of powers and abilities.
How do you get more of those slots available? Because I saw 9 total, but I only had 1 open, and I didn't see a way to unlock those.
It varies by character class. There's one character class where it's called like the Decal Master or something, and they have like a bunch of slots. It just depends on which class you pick. Some have more, some have less. But I think it is worth noting. They're literally decals. Like when you pick a decal, your character just like sticks them on their torso or stick them on their leg. Like it's not like an item. It's like literally stuck on their freaking body. It's hilarious.
It's advertising.
Yeah.
It's a sticker for STP oil or whatever.
Yeah. It's not a tattoo. Like it says something really weird about these fighters, which are again reanimated corpse ports or port corpses that are really just objects. that are being we're gonna see ferried up this tower, and so like why not put a sticker on it like it's your fucking MacBook?
Totally all over your legs, all over your chest. It's the best.
We mentioned online play. There's no direct multiplayer in the game. Like you're not going to be fighting a character that is controlled by somebody else, but you do have that asymmetrical stuff with the haters and the hunters. You can unlock something called the Tokyo Death Metro, and this is a system that I just did not engage with because
I didn't do this either.
About the home base stuff. Can you talk me through this, Brad?
Yeah, totally. Like once you get far enough in the game, it unlocks this option, and so what happens is they will give you a number of slots. You can put your inactive characters in these slots, so it's either like you can send them out to farm, or you can stick them as defense for your base. And so like when you come back from a run, if you have a lot of splithium or a lot of money, those will be saved in a bank, and people online can come and steal that from you. So you might want to put some people on defense to protect that. But full disclosure, like it never really works. Like aggressors always have the advantage because a real person can defeat the AI no problem. And when you factor in like they could be really specced out with some awesome gear, they could have some really powerful mushrooms. It's really not worth putting anybody on defense. So it's a good way, like if you want to be the aggressor for a while, you can go, and it only happens when someone's offline. So you cannot attack anybody when they're online. You will never fight a person in real life. But when they are logged off, you can go and mess up their house, steal their stuff, and come back. If you can play while you're on, you can rack up a lot of money, and nobody can steal it from you while you're on. So what I would do is I would go do a bunch of raids, collect all the money, and then spend it all before I logged off, because otherwise somebody would just steal it from me.
Right.
That's basically what it boils down to.
Yeah. They can't come and take your death medals. Like this is just for stuff that you get.
Oh yeah. If they're stealing real money, like things you paid real money.
Yeah,
for,
that would be horse garbage. But I don't want somebody. Yeah. Just like actual there would be some kind of weird piracy going on.
It reminds me a lot of MGS5, right?
Yeah,
isn't that? It's kind of like an MGS5 thing.
The forward operating base. Yeah, the same concept. Yeah. So they'll steal your in-game currency, but they will not steal the stuff you actually paid money for.
Yeah, I want to make sure just to clarify that, because somebody could interpret us talking. They're just, it's a free-to-play game. Scavs of different currencies. Well, three different currencies. Only one of which you directly pay money to get.
Yeah, and that one's yours. Once you get that, it's yours. No one can take it. Nothing can happen to that. So it's all just in-game stuff that they're fighting over.
Yeah.
Yep.
So as we mentioned, you have a bunch of all the stuff, all the flavor in the game, is this kind of rhythm between going to the tower and going to your town. Your town is set up as this kind of circular, mall, kind of.
Yeah.
And this is where your resources are. So there's a healing fountain in the middle that you can use to teleport to the arcade, and do kind of interact there. We'll talk about that in a second. But the other things you're kind of going to interact with here, the mushroom lady you rescued in the tutorial, the mushroom magistrate, is a woman who is obsessed with like a sexual fervor, with sexual religious fervor with mushrooms.
Yeah.
And she sells you and puts decals on you and allows you to cook the mushrooms. Commodore Suzuki is our item shop guy who's got like a Hitler mustache and a little mortarboard.
Yep.
And he's the one who you're going to give your blueprints to and buy things from.
Yeah.
You
have two DirectTel representatives, Kawaki Sato, who you see when you get game overs, or Rin Tarai, who is the person who operates the express elevator. Both of these will occasionally give you just information about the way those particular systems work. Kawaki Sato, after you defeat bosses, will actually appear with Uncle Death to take like a picture of the character that you beat the boss with. But that is always in the in the area right after the boss fight. Yeah.
Cool little selfie. She does that for you. It's nice.
Yeah. And then there's also the super creepy dummy who runs the Tokyo Death Metro. Fuck that.
Like a
the
Johnny
weird
Cab.
thing about that guy, he looked totally Johnny Cab for sure. And he's all messed up and weird and kind of stuck in the wall. Like, it looks like he's not even supposed to be there. But the weird thing is that later on in the game, at some point, I don't know when it was, but they're like, you might think that he's a ventriloquist dummy, but he's an actual person. So how messed up is that? That's really creepy.
Well, here's the thing: the way they render him, like it seems like they're trying to communicate like a metallic shine. He just looks moist.
Yes.
Maybe that's sweat. It's actual sweat from whatever poor person is trapped inside that shell.
Oh, God.
Gross.
Dennis Hopper's moistener was on set
just to mist him.
To keep him extremely moist.
To dab on some baby oil.
Yeah, dab on this dummy. The arcade, which you mentioned, is where you can go. This is the framing device for the game, where Uncle Death is having you play this game, Let It Die. There are a couple of people here. Majin, who's a very funny character, is this programmer who kept sending me texts that he had hints for me.
Yeah.
And then when I went, he just tried to brag about all the girls he's had sex with virtually. And it was very funny. Like, there were no tips or tricks involved. Like, I'm like, what, you were bugging me to come back to the arcade, like, and there's nothing here. Like, you're just telling me jokes. It was very funny.
Yeah.
And then Naomi Detox is this phone addicted teen who shows up there. Again, also mostly ignores you, but will give you quests, as we mentioned.
Yeah, I didn't engage with the quest structure in this at all. I just wanted to get up the tower to get as high as I could. Are there like rewards for engaging with this?
Yeah, they'll give you some very specific. They're broken up by difficulty, like 1 to I think 5-star or something. So you can pick. It's like, kill 5 tubers, kill somebody with the iron. Do a finisher. Really easy stuff at first. It gets harder as you go on, but the rewards are the metals that you need for crafting. So if you get a blueprint that has a really cool weapon like the sniper rifle or something, or the assault rifle, something that you really want really badly, and you cannot find that material, you can scan through the quest and just look at the rewards and pick out whichever one you need. And then once you go and do that, they will just give you the reward. It's pretty easy at first. I mean, of course, Some of those get really challenging, but it's a good source of easy medals early in the game.
Yeah. I dig that. Like, it's not something that I, again, have a lot of desire to do. Like, hey, go kill 10 of these things. Not for me, really. However, for the hypothetical person who might want a little bit more structure to this, as opposed to just like, hey, climb as high as you can, or, would look for, examples of things that they could do. Like, this is a good thing to have, I think. I'm happy it exists.
Yeah. And it's totally optional. Like, I mean, I bet most people can get through the game without even knowing that she actually gives you quests because they don't really shove it in your face.
Right.
But yeah, if you want to just, you want to do one thing real quick, you've got maybe half an hour to play and you jump in, you could knock out one or two quests and feel like you actually accomplished something. So it's there if you like it. If you don't like it, totally ignore it. And it doesn't hurt you in any way.
Yeah, optional kind of systems. Yeah. Which is cool. Let's talk about the kind of bosses and mini bosses you're going to run into.
Yes.
Here. So there are 3 mini bosses we run into called the 3 Shocks Terror. Are these 3 dudes? I only ran into the first one, a couple times. Cohen, which is like, okay. This is this ogre guy with he's got these legs kind of coming out of him. This all these like fleshy weird legs that come up to him, and he's real simple. He's blind, so he sees through echolocation. He kind of stomps and creates a sound image where you're going to be. So if you're sneak, you can stay away from him, and he only has a couple different moves. This two fist combo kind of pound on the ground, and AoE stomp attack kind of charge. He knows where you're at and you're far away.
Yeah.
Reasonably fun, not too bad. When you're approaching one of these, Uncle Death will pop up and talk about how brave you are for going into this place he has a bad feeling about. But the first one, I was like pretty like, okay, this is not super hard.
It's kind of aside from the blindness angle, which is really cool, actually. This is like the template for a basic Souls kind of fight. A little bit big guy who will kind of freak out and do a lot of damage if you don't know exactly when to make your approach.
And like several of the bosses seem to follow this template more or less.
Yes.
Are kind of similar to this.
Yeah.
This boss, like the first main boss of this, the first kind of biome, like, follows has a lot of the same moveset.
Yeah.
Actually,
Is there any defense for Jin Dai? I was actually just going to bring that up. I was going to say that I like Cohen the best because he is the most boss-like boss, where he's got very clear tells, and once you know what he does, he gets more moves as you go higher in the tower, but he's always pretty easy. He's a meat wall, so sometimes it takes like forever and a day to chip him down if your gear is not up to spec. But you know what you got when you deal with him. With Jindai, no, I think that boss is awful. I wish it was eradicated from the game. I hate it.
Yeah.
It is, it's like this kind of corpse-like lady who's sitting on like a skirt made of skulls.
It's like a Nashandra.
Yeah, basically. And so she's got like all these like security cameras just attached to her body, and she looks all around, and they have these laser sights. And so people always I was asking friends like for better strategies, and everybody said, well, just rush up and melee, but that doesn't really work. She has a bunch of different projectile attacks, and she teleports.
Yeah.
She's got a plasma cannon and shit, and it's just like, I hate fighting her.
Yeah, like this was a death metal sync for me, actually. Like I probably used like 5 of them. Just getting continues because I didn't want to make the run. I felt like I just, there were times where I would, a couple of them, I would die, revive, and then just get killed again because she would immediately hone in on me. And also, like, you fight her in these arenas that have pillars around. So, okay, obviously you want to use this for cover, but there's no apparent like aiming period for her. It's just kind of like beep, you're out, and then immediately she's lobbing these bombs at you.
Oh, she's terrible. And, I got to say, I think that out of all the bosses in the game, I feel like this one is probably the worst because, you can spec yourself out a certain way, but I think certain mushrooms will help you get through this fight. If you have the ones that turn you invisible or the ones that make you invincible, you can get through it pretty easily. But that's kind of a cheat. I think in general, this boss is really shitty. It's just awful design.
No.
There's no real predictability to it. It's really hard to dodge her attacks. And when you finally get up to her do melee, she just teleports away, or she'll hit you with a cannon. I hate this boss. I hate it. Always hated it. Sucks all the way through.
Yeah, it's I'm glad to hear that I wasn't just dumb.
No, this is the developer saying, "Hey, we think it's time that you give us $1." So this is what's going down.
The Super Bunny Hop video on this game, kind of like one of the central kind of problems he has about it when he talks about, it's a really interesting like kind of nuanced take because I think he ultimately doesn't like it, but he's very like sympathetic to the early, like he talks about the kind of that early game late game dichotomy in an interesting way, and he's not just like shitting on it. But one of the things he talks about this boss a lot, as like the breaking point for when he started feeling like the free to play stuff breaks down. You know, like this is the first boss where it's just kind of, it's unfair and it's kind of expected that you're just gonna give it some money.
Yeah, as much as I hate to admit it, I think that is absolutely correct. I hate this boss. I wish they would fix it and make it a little bit more fair. Because even, I mean, without the mushrooms, it's really, you're just going to die. You're just going to straight up die. So I do not like it, and I agree with that take. It is going to be 50 cents or $1 to get through this. Just know that.
Yeah. The third of these 3 Shocks Terror is one that I didn't fight. Didn't get far enough to do this. Go to 9. Which is a fun name. This is like a large human flesh spider, like a spider made out of limbs and stuff. Visual design on all these really great. Like Jin Dai, aside from the terrible mechanics of her fight, this Nishandra that is completely laden with these security cameras. Great image. Go-To 9 looks amazing. The fight for Go-To 9 didn't seem that particularly special. Its gimmick seems to be that it'll lay down acid on the arena, kind of like Quelaag with her lava, right?
Yeah, it'll do this giant vomit, and if you get stuck in the vomit, you'll do like this little like funny cartoon banana peel animation where you're just like slipping, and you can't. Yeah, totally. It's like one of those things where it's like Warner Brothers, and he'll get a couple of hits off you on that, but it's pretty easy to dodge. He'll also stick out a tongue, and if his tongue grabs you, it'll remove one of your pieces of equipment. So like it'll like de-equip your weapon or some of your armor. So that's a problem if you get hit. Not a huge problem. I like this boss just fine. Not as easy as Cohen. Certainly more fair than Jindai. And you fight it in a bunch. It's fine. It's not a problem.
Yeah. And there's one boss I didn't even realize was a boss. The kind of the super hunter. What's her name? I have it here. Something like U10, I think.
U10, yeah. That is the boss. They don't really talk about much, but she shows up in the end game. She's in the final tier, and also the main last boss kind of has her moveset. It's like a skinless body which has like a giant like prehensile tail coming out the back of it, and it walks around on the tail like a snake, like snake rearing up, like a cobra about to strike, and it kind of whips the tail around. Has a lot of really fast aerial moves. It's not fun. I mean, it's doable, but it's really, really tough. That is also bordering on the give me $1 kind of a spectrum.
Yeah, the flight sounds like a deal breaker on that, actually.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, by that point, you probably have a bunch of mushrooms, and with the right mushrooms, you just, you kick its ass, no problem. But without those mushrooms, that would be a really horrific fight. I would not want to do that.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. So there are actually bosses. There are just 4 that kind of guard every 10 levels. You're going to run into those mini bosses kind of intermittently, and they're these bosses. You can get the backstory on these through finding these Tales from the Barbs comics that you can find in different areas, and you can collect all those and get their kind of backstory. And these are all kind of genuinely and singularly interesting, like kooks. Like these are all pretty great. I got to the first one after some kind of trial, but ended up eventually just watching the rest of them. I got to the first one, was not powered well enough to beat it, even though I don't think it's that hard, or it didn't seem like it would be that hard, but I wanted to, do other stuff. So I stopped. But I watched them all online, and their little like intro videos and stuff are all great. Like the flavor of these guys is fantastic.
Yeah. Those intro videos are really, really pretty creepy, actually. Just kind of the lo-fi paper doll kind of aesthetic with the mouths overlaid on the drawings of the faces.
Yeah. Like those old Conan O'Brien.
Yeah.
Kind of things. Yeah.
So the first of these bosses is kind of a hillbilly kind of guy.
Actually, real quick, sorry to, what a good thing if you're gonna play this game, I think finding this stuff would be like kind of a real joy. So let's go ahead and put in our like little bit of a spoiler thing from here on out. Like, we're gonna talk about the bosses and then also talk about what happens in the end. Because I didn't get there, but I spoiled it for myself, and I think it's interesting and cool. But just letting everyone who's listening know that like if you're still making your way through the game. If you haven't heard about this, judging based on the number of responses we got, I think a lot of people have not played this. If this all sounds good to you and you want to play it, stop listening.
Yes.
Patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv, GameCritics.com. Let's go. So just throwing that in there because this is kind of a lot of that flavor of the game, and I would hate to give away the ghost if
Yeah.
No, that's totally fair. I agree. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Yeah, but Max is a hillbilly head with arms. And by which I mean it's not just like, hey, here are arms. No, the arms are growing out of the side of his head where his ears would be. It's a very bizarre image. Do we have any like backstory on him? Because I didn't seek out those comics. I just watched the intro.
I read the wiki, on these four guys. He was a person who was like into like industrial arts and like, and just kind of sounds like a psychopath. He did, he put his arms on the side of his head. He did that to himself as a self-modification to make it easier to kind of tinker. And then eventually kind of formed a gang of people. But he has this thing where it's like if people call him Crab Man, he goes crazy. And that happened. And that's, he ended up murdering some people because of that. And that's it though. There's not really like and that's why he is in the tower. It's just kind of like what happened before you came along.
Yeah.
Yeah, spot on. I thought that was really interesting because I don't really think that putting my own arms on my head would make me a better tinkerer. But apparently there must be some advantage to that.
Because you don't need to hear, I guess. I don't know.
I could see it being easy, like once you got used to it, if you're just a head with arms, maybe it'd be easier to like climb around on like a big thing that you're tinkering with. Like his mech or whatever, like getting into tight spaces, maybe. It does make sense. It is just like all of these enemies are just heads, but this is a guy who's got arms on the side.
Yeah. It's a weird design. It's a little bit like MODOK.
Yeah.
Totally.
Or Arnim Zola, actually. Like, it's much more like Arnim Zola. Just making sure. Hey, Marvel kids who are going crazy about that. So
somebody was really mad there for a second.
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit like MODOK, but I know who Arnim Zola is.
A voice rises up from the well, actually.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
But no, so this fight actually has like a little stage in front of it because he immediately, like, he runs a death train. And you have to go up this train that is filled with traps and screamers and stuff in order to get to the head where you actually fight him. Get to the head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I actually thought this was one of the coolest levels. I'm sorry, Gary, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say in the fight itself. I was gonna talk about the fight itself. So you go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say I really like this level because the first time I got to it, it was a real surprise. I expected just your typical, big room boss arena, but you're actually like on the back of this train. Then its train is like screaming along these tracks underneath the tower, and you got to make your way up car by car. I totally did not see that coming. I thought it was really interesting and fun. The cars have traps inside of them. They have like some snipers on top. You kind of make your way through it. You jump onto another train at one point, which I thought was also neat. And once you get to the engine, that's kind of where like the area is that you fight them. But I just thought that was really cool, like a really unexpected surprise.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is like that stage is real neat. He puts his head onto a gigantic mech that looks a little bit like the combat bots from Aliens, and fights you mostly like a big daddy. He's got drills and saws and stuff.
Yeah, and his moveset's like kind of like a Koani. Like he kind of does the same kind of bangs,
Yeah.
That you have.
Yeah, so he'll kill you the first time. I mean, all these bosses are pretty much going to kill you the first time, but like once you know what they're doing, it's also kind of like a gut check too, because if your gear is up to spec, most of these bosses are cake. Mm-hmm. But if you start fighting one and you're like, oh man, I'm not really doing much damage, that's kind of your cue to go back and like get better gear. I know a lot of people were kind of freaking out about, they thought that was like where the game was trying to get you, like to pay more money. I really don't think it is. I think it's more of a, hey, FYI, this is our non-specific way of telling you that your gear is not up to snuff, so go back and play some more. But I guess people didn't get that message. But theoretically, if you have ground out the materials, or if you have good enough stuff, it's not really that tough a fight once you know the moveset.
Yeah. He didn't feel especially like HP spongy. Like, I, with my, let's say 10 hours that I put into the game, getting to this point, I felt like I was, doing enough damage to him to survive and come out the other side. Yeah. When
you eventually beat him, his head kind of gets decapitated and then lands in your sticker book. We didn't really talk about your sticker book.
Yeah.
It's just kind of this memento thing that you can get. There are these little rhythm games you can do throughout the tower to give you stickers. Do those do anything, Brad, other than just like kind of collectible?
Yeah, it is. Although actually hearing you say that out loud kind of makes me think about how cool and absurd this game is, because we've been talking about like this weird post-apocalyptic thing, and now we have a sticker book and we play a rhythm game. So that actually does happen. Yeah. If you find the sticker machine on each floor, so there's 40 floors, 40 sticker machines. If you get all of them, you can use the sickle that Uncle Death has. You can get that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So pretty cool. Kind of worth it if you are, enjoying the game enough to go and track all those down.
Yeah.
Does it have unlimited durability?
It
Is
does
like
not. I actually did not make it, so I can't speak for that. But my friend Darren did make it. He said it's cool looking. It is not as cool as you think it would be. But it's another like just like the Jackals, like more of a prestige item again.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, but yeah, his head lands in your sticker book, and then you get the sticker of him.
Yeah.
So there is a sticker on each floor, and then a sticker for the boss as well.
And specifically his bloody neck stump is what lands in your sticker book.
And that's what makes the stamp.
Yeah, the hole where his esophagus was, or whatever. And oddly, it looks like his face, which is weird.
Well,
that is very weird.
You don't have that? Yours doesn't do that? No. Yeah. No, there's also a super cool image when you kill these guys. Again, there's an outro cinematic that actually has like an overlay of a candle flame, and then when they die, the candle is blown out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so that's the only one I had any touch with, and then the rest of them I watched, like I said, online.
Yeah.
The next one has a little bit less kind of personality to it, I think. Jackson.
Yes. This is the boss of the urban decay biome.
Yeah.
I thought this was a pretty cool boss in that he is just like, he's overtly gay and like nobody makes a big deal out of it. So I thought that was kind of a cool thing. You know, his backstory is that he's like a military guy, kind of a narcissist, and falls in love with Johnny, just some other soldier guy. But he's also in love with bombs, and their romance was not to be. Johnny gets blown up by standing too close to one of his bombs. And so he's like pining for his lost boyfriend the whole time. I thought it was cool. Like it's just one of those little things where it wasn't a big deal. It was just a fact, and you just moved on with the game, and it didn't affect anything. Yeah. I really liked how that was just like, you know, just something neat.
It's also it's also kind of tragic because when you find him, he's calling you Johnny. Like he believes that everybody is Johnny. Like coming back to him.
Yeah, it is kind of sad, and you know, I was hoping for a happy ending to that, but no. He is going to be re-decapitated and put away like the other guy was. There's no happy ending, no smooch at the end of this.
No.
He becomes just capitated. And then becomes decapitated. Like a lot of these fights are all based on these mini bosses, honestly. So a Jindai appears, which we talked about, the shitty Jindai appears, and Jackson's head gets kind of grafted onto it. All these things are heads, like modular heads. And it looked, just from watching YouTubes of it, very similar to the Jindai fights.
Yeah.
That I'd watched.
Yeah, totally. You're in a big arena. I mean, it's kind of a different space. You've got like some wrecked buildings you can take cover behind. And you can run around. Also, at the beginning of that fight, there are 3 time bombs, and so you have to like run around and deactivate those first before the fight starts. So there's like little added pressure. It's pretty cool. Although I will say, I think probably the place where this game fell down the most for me was I was kind of disappointed in the bosses. I thought the first one was okay, like pretty cool. He didn't seem too much like Cohen to where I felt like it was just a reskin Cohen. I felt like he was different enough. But the rest of them, I feel like were kind of just clones. Like you said, this one is a Jindai clone. The next one is a clone of Go-To-9, and the last one is a clone of U-10. I mean, they're tougher and they look different, but essentially they're the same. When I felt like they could have done a little better job on those. Yeah. Kind of bummed.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't argue with that. I think.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about on the Bonfireside Chat about how like Souls doesn't do like gigantic monster bosses, particularly well, but at the very least, like they're not. You don't usually run into a boss where it's like it's just a version of something you've already fought. Totally. Like at least feels pretty different.
Yeah.
All these, the goodness in these guys is in the flavor.
Yeah. Yep. The next boss, the boss of the kind of medieval dungeon biome, I guess, is Crowley, who is a game master. Like this is great. Yeah, he's like a wizard kind of guy. And he deems you unworthy to fight because he rolls a 1 on a 6-sided die. What's his kind of backstory?
He has a D&D backstory. I think he was just a dungeon master. I don't remember the specifics. Do you remember the specifics, Brad?
Yeah, he was actually a kid. He's like a young kid, and he wanted to be like a pretty hardcore D&D person. So he artificially aged himself into looking like an old man. He kind of does his like really lame kind of Gandalf get up. But so he's actually like 14 or something like that. But he looks like he's 80 or whatever. And he like blew up his whole town with his lightning attacks. He somehow, harnessed some kind of Tesla machine or something. Yeah. And he just vanished. So he killed a bunch of people and left. And he comes back here as, the ruler of the creepy castle, the spooky biome. Yeah. So he's basically just like a Go-To-9 fight. So he's got like the giant spider body, but it's all kitted out. It's got like guns and a lot of like mortar attacks where he'll launch stuff into the air and it'll come down on you if you're not, you got to like keep dodging and juking to make sure you don't get crushed by the stuff, the fireballs he drops. It's actually not a bad fight at all. It's just like Go-To 9 where, you can, once you know what he does, it's pretty simple.
Yeah. And this starts out with like a fight against a bunch of screamers and a couple of haters as well.
Oh, I forgot to mention that. That's the best part. He rolls like a D9, D20 or something. And whatever he rolls, that determines what you fight before you get to him. So like there's a number of different results. Like if you roll a 1, you fight 1 hater, you roll a 6, you fight 3, but there's a bunch of different outcomes. And as I was talking to friends, I thought it was really neat that they put that little bit in there. So depending on what the roll is, it could be really easy or it could be really hard.
Yeah. And then the final fight is Gunkanyama, who is kind of like a Shogun kind of figure. Shogun, Emperor.
Sumo, big sumo guy.
Sumo, yeah, there we go. Yeah. And this starts out with kind of a gladiatorial fight on this platform that is kind of made of hands. Again, very striking design. And then he turns into a clone of the U-10 fight.
Oh, yeah. This is a really interesting fight and really intimidating because when you get there, Uncle Death...
they take your clothes.
Yeah. He shows up and he gives you this long spiel about, are you ready, senpai? And like, I appreciate the game gives you heads up. It would be really shitty to walk into this and not expect it. So he takes all your gear. Like you show up in just like your underwear or whatever, and you got to fight. And each guy that you fight successively, drops a piece of your gear or armor. So the more guys you beat, like by the time you beat them all, you've got all your stuff back, which is cool. But at the beginning, it's a little pants wetting. You're like, oh my God, like how am I going to fight without my gear? This is crazy. So
yeah. Fortunately, your unarmed attack is pretty good, actually. Like,
punching dudes work. I will say, this fight is really hard. We've already said the spoiler warning, so I'll just say, like, if anybody playing this game gets this fight, like, definitely get some of the invisibility mushrooms, like, save those for this fight because it makes this fight way easier. And if you get really good drops, like, I think Gary, you mentioned earlier, like, you can get gear that's better than where you're at. Like, enemies will drop it sometimes. Like, save the best stuff you have for this fight because it can be a really, really long fight. And if your invisibility mushrooms wear out before he's dead, it gets nasty really, really fast. So it's another pretty unfair fight.
Yep. And then that's the ending. That's when you get access to the ending. You fight these guys. There's a little bit of kind of, plot, as we mentioned, those different biomes you move through. We talked about that with the bosses. And the kind of information you're getting, all those 4 biomes are related to these 4 different corporations that we kind of learn a little bit about and kind of don't learn that much about. It's in reading about it, like there's not comprehensive reading on it, like there would be with like a Souls, but even in looking at it, it seems a little bit like a kind of plot that you're probably best like unfocusing your eyes a little bit. Yeah. When you get to the end, like everything kind of like traces its way back to this Yatsuyama Corp group, which is run by Uncle Death. You do this like psychedelic elevator ride surrounded by Uncle Death's floating in space. Again, just like graphically amazing. Until you get to this like really, really great denouement here. Like I like the way this ends a whole lot.
Yeah.
As a thing, because it is, it's taking the piss, like it's countering your expectations. Death starts breaking bad and saying like, hey, this whole tower was me. I'm Uncle Death. Hey, fucking idiot. I'm Death. Like, of course I want people to die. I've been pretending to be, your buddy. Like, you didn't think that, but like, actually this whole humanity couldn't even come together after, this great disaster. If they're just running on killing each other now, what worth are they? I'm going to ram the moon into Earth.
Yeah, he has been ferrying these souls up this tower and to the moon to light it on fire with their splithium, so he can just drop it into the planet and end it all.
Yeah. Yep. And then he says, and his voice changes like tone, and he sounds like he's going to be a shithead. And then eventually says, actually, no. I grew to admire your gaming skills so much, senpai, that I don't want to do that anymore. Screw that.
Well, this is after they fake out the gigantic Cthulhu.
Yeah,
boss
the moon
fight.
just slides through the. No, that's before that. The moon just slides into the background. Oh, yeah. Then he says, "You don't have to do it." Then a gigantic Cthulhu monster comes over the horizon, and it looks like it's going to be the boss. He's like, this is where you're prepared for the final boss. I don't want to do that anymore, man. And then just cuts it down. So. because you don't have to fight it.
Yeah.
Really, really great. Like it's very, very cute.
And so Death has decided, hey, my whole mission that I set up, that's we're not going to do that anymore. This game that I designed to trick you into serving my needs, let's just like get the new version of the Death Drive and just kick back and, chill, let's just play games.
I love how this whole game just ends in a lol JK. Like it's pretty cool. And I gotta say, like, as being the tower junkie that I am, I'm always very curious as to see what developers are going to put at the top, and usually it's disappointing. It's usually just something dumb. Some NPC comes back that you never really cared about in the first place, or something like that. But in this one, I really felt like they really captured the spirit of the game. I felt like when I got to the top, I mean, it's a lot of work to finish this game. I mean, I don't mean to like toot my own horn, but I think it's really a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of effort to actually finish this game. And I was just at a loss as to what could be up there. I mean, they say it's close to God, but what does that mean in game terms? Who knows, right? Like, is it going to be just some cheesy cutscene or what? And when you finally just get up there, and it's just like, it makes you laugh. Like, it's really funny and it's lighthearted, and they kind of give you the wink, but it's also kind of cool. I was like, man, I felt like really satisfied after all that was said and done. Like, I felt like it was really a good payoff, and I did not feel trolled at the end, which was really great. So I gave it a big thumbs up. I liked it a lot.
It's weird because it does seem to support one of the bigger theses about it. So you look at the title, Let It Die. Okay. Just let it go. There, it's gone. It's dead. Right. Most of the game is about like not getting attached to stuff. Like even your characters are disposable, right? They're going to die. You're going to start a new one. None of your gear sticks around any of that. And so for it to end with like, just fuck it. This mission, forget it. This boss fight, fuck it. Like it actually does kind of support it in a weird way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Plays right into the philosophy. It's so perfect.
For sure. And I mean, that's not, that's a large part of what like Dark Souls is about too, is that kind of accepting death kind of thing to it. I like it just because it would have been the generic thing for, Uncle Death to turn on you. And that felt like a video game ending. Like, what is this? Like Far Cry 5 or something like that. Like that felt like a video game ending that like, oh, I've been tricked this whole time. And then it's like, no, that's stupid. Like you fought the end boss. Like, let's just, we don't have to escalate this.
Yeah.
This thing, it is a game. It is fun. That's the kind of the point of it, is about this kind of expression of skill and joy, which I dug. Yeah. As kind of like an ending. I think as far as actually expressing those themes of like letting go, it didn't, work quite as it does support it. It doesn't work. This game didn't like, I can't imagine it's touching my heart, in a way that like, it's not that like,
it's definitely a lighter touch version of that. Like it's not, meant to be this hugely philosophical thing. It just, you can see that in a through line throughout.
Yeah. It's not inconsistent.
Right. It's not a warm hug or tears at the end. It's like cracking up a beer and saying "fuck yeah!" Like that's how it ends.
Yeah.
Fuck it, dude. Let's go play bowling. Let's go play bowling games.
Totally.
For sure. Which is like which I think works for it real well. In like a game like so now that that's what we're going to talk about. That's Let It Die. For a game like I ultimately, like I said, not for me. Like I didn't, and I'm not. This is not a personal attack on you, Brad, or anybody listening, but like I didn't have that much fun playing it, and it didn't really work for me. Like there's a lot of things I appreciate about it, right? So like there's things I think that are cool. It is hard for me to decide whether I think that, it's something I would like. I don't think it's something I want to go back to though. I didn't have that. Sometimes when I run out of time before we cover something on any of our shows, I think like, oh, like if I had all the time in the world, I would definitely play this. And now I don't know if I would. I think it is that kind of early game slog and my resistance to kind of like dopamine loops, like just making progress, just making things, numbers improving the town, that kind of like slow patience loop is not really a thing for me, and it doesn't mean it's bad in the game. It just means that like, I don't think that's something that appeals to my like kind of gaming values. Fuck me. Like it doesn't appeal to like the kinds of things I like, the things I'm looking for in a game, that's just, I think that's just kind of not me. So like, ultimately just the lack of the things that I don't like about Chalice. It's not as bad as Chalice Dungeons because nothing is bad as Chalice Dungeons, but like the things I dislike about Chalice Dungeons, I still dislike here. And I needed those in Chalice Dungeons. I need them here. Like I would need that to be part of the game for me.
No, that makes perfect sense. I get that for sure.
And like the thing with Chalice Dungeons, at the very least, like at least you have Bloodborne's base combat stuff. And this eventually gets to that kind of depth, or gets to, approaches that kind of depth, but it doesn't start out with it. So I'm not even controlling a little Bloodborne guy around like these, sewers. So it's just like at the end of the day, like what I would actually be doing was not that compelling to me to make it worth finishing. But I was really glad that we were able to get you on to talk about the kind of stuff that comes later, because it does, from the beginning of this episode to now, I do have a greater appreciation for like the way, the systems of this game. It never felt haphazard. I trusted there was kind of method behind it. I have greater appreciation for it the same way I might appreciate like a well-constructed song in a genre I don't want to listen to. Yeah. Like this could be like the best reggae song. It doesn't matter. I'm still never going to listen to it. It could be like that kind of thing.
Yeah. My feelings are pretty similar. I think the patience-based stuff and like the slower, longer loops thing probably appeals to me a little bit more than it does to you. It's just a matter of, there are different versions of my life where this would probably fit in. I have to call the shots on this in terms of really engaging with something in this long of a on that long of a time frame. So it didn't get its hooks into me to a point where it's like, yes, I'm going to invest all of the time into beating it here. But there's some great ideas in this, and the aesthetic really worked for me. And we heaped a lot of praise on it throughout the episode, but no final summation of this would be complete without circling back around and saying like they nailed that part of it 100%, and that matters a lot to me. Yeah, like
we have to give it the credit. It's just the same way that the final summation would also be like, I don't want anyone coming away from this and be like, yeah, X, Y, and Z are actually very good, and but for me it wasn't enough. But maybe like decide for yourself if you're listening to this, because it is risk free.
Yeah.
Like it's literally like jump on there and give it a shot and see if it grabs you, because it's free and you get a lot for you. Even if you conceptualize it as a demo, you're getting a very robust demo for nothing.
Yeah. I mean, as for me, I think that it clicked with me because I think I was at a place in my life where I wanted something that was, in total, it's a huge game, but it's very digestible in small chunks. And I like that I could kind of just chip away at it, but I got the intensity of kind of a Souls thing. Like it's not exactly Souls, but there's enough of the same carryover, like that same type of combat, like frame-based combat and dodging. And, it got really intense at times when I really, really didn't want to die. And so I would be in these tough spots, and that kind of like adrenaline pumping got me going. But at the same time, it was shallow enough to where I could engage with it on a good level, a comfortable level, but it wasn't like I had to go lore diving or I had to like do all this really intense stuff. I didn't have to like prep so much. Like it kind of just drop in, do a couple levels and drop back out, but still get that same satisfaction of a really like well put together kind of like Japanese action combat game. So I like the style, and I like that I could just chip away at it over time. I mean, I think also I've been playing a lot of, kind of derailing this for a second, I've been playing a lot of Marvel Puzzle Quest. I imagine you guys probably don't play that, do you?
No, I do not.
No.
Okay, so that's another free-to-play game. It's the only other free-to-play game that I play. And that is another game where it's got this super long, like, you cannot expect to get anywhere in that game in like a week's time. Like it's like measured in years, right? So like that game has taught me a lot of patience, and I've seen how that has blossomed over time. And so the rewards over like 1 or 2 or 3 years have been really worth it. And I think it sounds weird, but I've actually become like more of a patient person after playing that game. And I think that kind of applied to Let It Die, where I was able to see like the long-term goal and be satisfied with these small incremental steps. Whereas with other games, that is not true. Like this one just happened to click, and I'm not like that with all games. Like if I play Souls, I want to, I definitely want to like move faster. Or if I play something that's more, like a Vanquish that just got re-released on PC or something, I want to blast through that and have a lot of action and go through really quickly. But this one, it had enough of a balance where I was happy enough with the small steps, but at the same time, it was intense enough to where I wasn't bored. Like I wasn't just grinding. Like I felt like I was playing a legit action game, but also like the end goal was so far away. Like I just, one step at a time, journey of 1,000 miles or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that, and I think there's probably some of the DNA in me. Something that comes up on the network a lot is that like I don't do perpetual games,
totally,
in general.
Totally.
So it's like the part of me that doesn't want to slowly build up that patience is the same part of me that doesn't want to get really good at Counter-Strike, or really get like spend a bunch of time getting good at Rocket League or Overwatch or something. Like that's just never going to appeal to me because it's a non-ending commitment. This has an ending. Like you can get to an ending of it. I mean, it does. We didn't really talk about it. You can play after the ending.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go back into it.
It does have an ending you can look for,
Totally. That was actually, I'm glad you brought that up because that is really the difference for me. I knew there was an ending, a discrete ending, and I could work towards that. So even though it took a long time, it was not infinite because I'm just like you. I don't like those games that go on forever. I got to have an end point. And even though this one was really far away, like knowing that there was a finish line, that really kept me going. Like I like to have that credits rolling, that finite finish. And once I got there, that was super satisfying. But if it wasn't for that ending, if it was just the exact same game without an ending, I don't know that I would have played it.
It's an interesting thing because it's also the people who I talk to who are the biggest Chalice Dungeon defenders. That's what they're getting into too. Is like they don't want that ending. They do want a perpetual game, and they will will do Bloodborne stuff because they want, or they'll do Chalice stuff because they want a perpetual Bloodborne. You know, and I just don't want a perpetual anything. You know,
Same.
Only good things. You know, the only things, all things that end are not all things that end are good. To be good, you must end. You know, it's like it's, you know, and so yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I can understand this being an exception. I'm not trying to like do the internet thing of like, you know, one bit of hypocrisy invalidate you. Like I understand the feeling like, oh, like this is, you know, semi-perpetual, but this worked for me. This other thing didn't. Yep. You know, or this technically has an ending and that's good enough for me. Even though, and I could totally see that. I think that the early game core mechanics just were not strong enough for me.
Yeah.
So
sorry, I've been kind of silent. Brad said that Vanquish was coming out on PC. And I got distracted by reading when that would happen and how much money I had to give them to make that happen.
It's really cheap. Yeah, it's like
$20.
If you get it's that in Bayonetta and you get a discount if you get both right now.
That is a fantastic game. I love that game so much. Right on.
Sorry, I didn't mean to check out, but you said that and I was like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah, I do not know Vanquish, so I have no idea.
Oh man, you got to play Vanquish,
no idea.
Gary.
I like
play Vanquish.
I don't know Vanquish.
I honestly, that's their best game. Honestly, I think bar none.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I like platinum stuff, so I'll take a look at that.
Yeah.
I think that's probably it. I think that you know, this is a long episode of the show, even by Bonfireside Chat standards. So like, good. I'm glad, you know, hopefully you know, there's an element of just defensiveness of like, you know, us wanting to like not have anybody be like, oh, you guys didn't get it because we didn't beat it. So I was really happy, you know, that you're able to come on with us, Brad.
Yeah, and thank you for being so generous with your time.
And hopefully,
oh my God, no, my pleasure. Yeah. I was thrilled to be on, and to be honest, it took me a little while to realize you guys were actually talking to me because I'm so used to hearing you on a podcast. It was weird that you guys were actually addressing me. It's kind of like a little dream come true for me. Kind of, it's kind of weird.
Thank you, but please don't say that.
Yeah, that's very sweet. Where can people find you online, Brad?
You can find me on Twitter. It's at Brad Gallaway, and it's all A's, no O's, no O's in my name. People always want to put an O in my name, and they're literally not kidding. No O's in my name. Also, I am
Road. Road Golowo.
It's weird. People always want to put an O, and it's not happening. Never happening. It's not going to be a thing. It's all A's, all A's. Other than that, I am the editor of GameCritics.com, and we put new stuff up every week. I don't write reviews as often as I do because I have a lot of editing duties because I kind of manage things on a day-to-day basis, but I still do reviews, and I'm on Twitter all the time, and I'm really happy to interact with people. I'm also one half of the So Video Games podcast, which I do with my good friend Corey Motley. We do that weekly, and if you are looking for some more podcasts to listen to, once you listen to every single thing on the Duckfeed network, please come over and give our show a try. You can find us at sovideogames.com, and we're also posting at Game Critics as well.
Awesome.
If you like Bonfireside Chat, we talked about this recently. This is the first episode we're doing since we announced the end date for the show, how this is ending. But you can find that information online. We talked about it on social media and stuff. You know, that's coming. But we're looking forward to that revisit and everything.
Yeah.
The next thing before that revisit, though, next week we're going to be recording about Neo. So if you're hearing this, there's still time to write in about it, but maybe not as much time as you might think because we're recording it early because I'm going on vacation.
Yep.
So tell us what you think about Neo. Tell us what you think about Hollow Knight.
Yes.
And hit us up at duckfeed.tv/contact.
Yeah. We really appreciate everybody who takes the time to do that. And you know the usual stuff. This has been a very long episode. Patreon.com/DuckFeed.tv for supporting us and helping us get through the response to the changes that we're making has been really great. And we're looking forward to the new things that are going to be possible with a combination of changes to the Patreon and changes to the show lineup.
Yeah, absolutely. And then like, you know, all those things, ratings, reviews, all that stuff. Really do appreciate it. Until next time, what should they do, Cole?
They should watch out for
what should
fuck. Oh, nope.
They should fuck.
Yeah.
We can leave it there, senpai.
Yep, you should fuck if you can. If you want to, it's fine.
Fuck, man, it's very cool, senpai.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon